Bob Strickland, I have to say hello to you.
Hi, Tim. Good to see you. You're looking
Yeah,
great.
how have you been?
Just great. Thanks. Enjoying the grandkids.
Yeah, me too.
Excellent. Good to see you.
Good morning, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the July 27th, 2023 Landmarks Commission meeting. Nice to see everybody in person and virtually. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law and section 101.021 of the Codified Ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by roll call vote. Recusal from any case due to a conflict of interest should be stated for our record prior to the beginning of the presentation. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, virtual attendants will use the raised hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raised hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking the raised hand icon again and muting your microphone. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activities are being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter submitted through proper channels have been considered. Proper channels for comments are sending an email to landmark@clevelandohio.gov email address with a comment or a letter, calling and or leaving a message at 216-664-2532, sending a letter or dropping off comments at City Hall located at 601 Lakeside Avenue, Suite 519. Communication with members of this body must follow proper channels for consideration. Any comments received by the stated deadline are collected by Landmarks staff and disseminated to the commission members prior to any scheduled meeting. Mr. Mussa?
All right, I'll walk us through the virtual meeting rules and procedures. The chair will call each agenda item and then each applicant will be invited to proceed through their presentation. Each presentation should be completed prior to questions and comments from the commission in order to facilitate a smooth presentation. Once the presentation is concluded, the chair will ask Landmark staff to summarize design review committee recommendations and any public comment received. The deadline for public comment is noon on the Tuesday prior to any regularly scheduled Cleveland Landmarks Commission meeting. Any received comments are distributed to the commission members prior to the meeting. Staff will also identify any members of the public present and scheduled to speak. Public comment is allowed at the discretion of the chair, and any individual providing public comment is permitted 2 minutes to speak to the agenda item in which they have an interest. The chair will then request a recommendation from staff. The commission will then begin deliberation and project review. Any commission member except the chair may make a motion at any point after an agenda item has been called.
We'd like to call the July 27th, 2023 Landmarks Commission to order. Mr. Musson, please call roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson? Mr. Benezzi? Mr. Dreyer?
Here.
Mr. Edmond?
Here.
Councilmember Gray? Director Wong?
Here.
Mr. Sambry?
Here.
Mr. Strickland?
Here.
Mr. Trosick?
Here.
Dr. Williams? And Ms. Trott.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum. In addition to the commission members, we have Kevin Roberts, a representative from the Law Department, as well as Jessica Beam, Carl Brenges, and myself from the Landmarks Office present. Just one note, there is a change to the agenda. Case 23-053 Help 6 Chimneys at 3943 Prospect Avenue requested a postponement this morning, so we'll not be hearing that case today.
All right, thank you. We'll begin with our certificates of appropriateness. We'd like to welcome our first applicant.
In addition to the commission members, we have Kevin Roberts, a representative from the Law Department, as well as Jessica Beam, Carl Brenges, and myself from the Landmarks Office present. Just one note.
That was a lag. I think that was someone online with a lag.
Can everyone online hear us now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, well then we will now begin with our certificates of appropriateness. We'd like to welcome the first applicant to unmute your mic, announce yourself for our records, and tell us about your project. The first applicant is located at 1220 West 9th Street, Main Avenue Murals on the Archer.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Drew Crawford from downtown Cleveland, formerly Downtown Cleveland Alliance.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'll go through this quickly, as I know you have a pretty full agenda, but this is our project called Main Avenue, 216 Rockin' Always Murals. We are proposing to put 2 murals on the side of the Archer, which is adjacent to the 27 Coffee Club, Coffee Club. So that's a little bit of context for the location, which is on Main Avenue, close to West 10th Street. Next slide, please. A little bit more of the context. The 2 murals, again, are on Main Avenue. Next slide, please. A little bit about the artist, Alex Tang. He is a local artist, and he has done items such as the Dealer Tire headquarters in the city of Cleveland, and has done some work at the Rock Hall. Next slide, please. The other artist is Steve Arrett, also goes by Monster Steve. He's also a local artist. I apologize, I'm getting them confused. I believe he's located in Canton, Ohio. And his kind of thing is these monsters ranging from a little scary to cute monsters, which is a little bit what we're going for in our mural presentation. Next slide, please. So these are the existing conditions on Main Avenue, looking east or up the hill. You can see that there is 1 mural already that indicates where the 27 Coffee Club is. Our proposal is to spread these out going up the hill. So first, the location for the Rockin' Always mural kind of follows up the hill, if you will, and then towards the top of the hill is the Monster Steve mural location. Next slide, please. There is another view there. It is off of Google Street View. So that graffiti has all been cleaned up in the past couple of years. This is a pretty graffiti prone wall and area of our downtown core. With the work of our team, we have been able to remove all of that graffiti, and it has existed as a clean wall ever since. So we're really excited about that. Next slide, please. So another existing conditions, I apologize, I do have a lot of slides, so I'll keep going quickly. Next slide, please. That's the Monster Steve mural location. I have a better view for you all towards the end, so next slide, please. Okay, so the first one, it's a little hard to see, and at the request of the local Design Review Advisory Council, I do have some different views for you towards the end of this presentation. But that says Rockin' 216 Always. So that's the mural that's proposed to go towards the middle of that particular wall, again, going uphill, the first one, and then the second one is more towards the top of that hill. Forgot to mention a really important part. This is in cooperation with local nonprofit Graffiti Heart. They've done a lot of projects in the region, so this is fully funded through them. So we're really, really excited about this. Just the idea of adding more art to the downtown core. And in particular, this place, we thought this was a good fit for graffiti-like art, given that there used to be a lot of graffiti here. But this is, you know, hopefully approved graffiti art with a positive context. Next slide, please. So this is the second mural that's proposed by Monster Steve. It's a little bit of an alien, as you can tell. Compared to his earlier work that you may have seen, this is a little bit softer. He does a pretty wide variety of art installations, and this is meant to be a little bit more cute, if you will. Next slide, please. So just some really quick context about what we as Downtown Cleveland have been doing in cooperation with some partners. The Main Avenue Public Art, you can see that we, and for those of you who go down there, we have some great wayfinding that's been painted over the past couple of years, indicating directions towards the lake, the city, the river, and Lighthouse Park, which we installed last summer, which has been pretty successful. We also have the Main Avenue mural by artist Ryan Jenke. So it's the idea of just creating more colorful art in this particular area, given that it is under the bridge. So really trying to make this much more of a place, especially as it's a transition between different districts in the downtown core, from the warehouse district down to the flats. Next slide, please. A little bit of the project specifics, 2 mural installations, brick wall sections along the wall. The paint is aerosol. It's a special high pressure art. Will take approximately 2 to 3 days. Again, the artists, as I mentioned, are both local. Alex Tang is from Twinsburg and Steve Errett is from Canton. Please ignore that slide that says week of July 9th. They have not started on that. I apologize. Graffiti Heart is funding this project, and there's an opportunity for the community to observe throughout the installation. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit of the head-on context for this. And the artist, as far as we know, did want to do a large installation. So it's actually going to be the art, instead of standing up, if you will, it's going to be laying down. So that's the first mural. It'll be, as far as I know, it'll be 12 by 15 feet. I apologize, the renderings are not 100% accurate because it's a little bit larger than 12 by 15, but that's what the first mural is going to be. Next slide, please. And this is also going to be 12 by 15 feet, the Rockin' 216 Always mural. And I believe that's the end of the slides that we have. Thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you for the presentation. We'll move on to Design Review Committee recommendations. Ms. Petrus, would you like to go first, and then we'll move on to the Design Review Committee recommendations?
Yes, I am in support of the murals. Based on the location, I feel it's appropriate to have street art as you enter a historically industrial area. I think it's appropriate in that space. It's a great graffiti deterrent, and because it's street art, graffiti art, other graffiti taggers tend to respect it. And we've had success with the other murals that are closer to West End, the Ryan Janke mural that we saw last year, and Alan Giverson's murals that are perpendicular to those in the same vicinity. I think that it works for that particular area, and it also makes what used to be an intimidating walk with the graffiti and darkness and just enlivening the space. So you have a bit of a street art walking tour as you enter or exit that particular area. So I just wanted to just express my support from that standpoint. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Move on to Design Review Committee recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Historic Warehouse and Gateway District's Design Review Committee saw this project last week and recommended approval with the condition that the applicants confirm the dimensions and orientation of the murals.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to Landmark Staff Review comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This wall.
I apologize. I can't hear any questions. If there are questions, is somebody speaking?
Sorry about that.
Can you hear?
Yes, now I can hear. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. This wall has been a patchwork of murals in several different locations and sizes, and it would be helpful to understand the full context of the wall, even though you've shown some of the ones that are already existing. What has been painted, and are there any future plans? How do these all work together? In looking at what has been presented, this feels conceptual because there's different sizes, and what is shown on one side does not match what's shown on another. They kind of grow or shrink in size, so there's not really any accuracy to what we can see here. We would request measured drawings, understanding where these are being placed on the building. There should be drawings available from the Archer renovations from years ago, so staff can actually go and look and help out to give those to you, because we don't have actual dimensions here. There are natural breakpoints for the murals, including the horizontal bands and windowsills. Staff supports the proposals for the murals, but would require more accurate information. And we should also note that the 27 Club is more a sign rather than a mural. So that's, as nice as that is, we need to call it a sign. So we would support murals on this side. It just needs to be better documented as to where they're. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments.
I can jump in. So I'm a huge fan of public art and street art. I think, to the staff's point, there's an opportunity here for more mural arts along this whole section. And because of the natural breakpoints with the steel beams and the banding, you could have a full collection of murals along this whole area that would reflect the eclectic nature rather than sort of spots here and there. So I suppose I have a question and a comment, and my question is, is there a plan to begin sort of like a fuller plan of filling in these areas? We've seen them in other cities where, an artist takes like a piece, but it's a fully painted out area versus like here and there. So I am curious to hear your thoughts about that and plans.
Great. Joyce, that question was directed at me, correct?
Yeah, to the
Okay.
applicant. Yeah.
So that's a great question. To be completely honest, we do not have a full overall master plan for this wall. It was because Graffiti Heart is fully funding this for us, and it's a phenomenal opportunity to start art project installations. Our hope was that by staggering them up the wall, it provides opportunity to look, I guess I would say, look complete. If it, because it could be a couple of years before other art goes there. And if there was an opportunity for more murals to go there, we would space them equally to make it look accurate, or look complete, I should say, and contextual. But yes, I agree. It would be a really good idea for more murals to be here, but we've just been presented with this fully funded opportunity, and we think this is a really good wall for that.
And is it the artist that selected these specific locations, or were they just sort of spread out based on,
The Graffiti Heart, the nonprofit, in conjunction with the artists, felt that this was a very appropriate place for them because, again, of the previous graffiti that was there, and also the opportunity to enliven the space given how long of a walk it is. Certainly, we're learning a lot about historic buildings in downtown, and we have a lot of them, which is awesome. So we do know that the Archer, you are allowed to paint on it per our understanding of their historic tax credits. So that became a little bit more of a narrower group of buildings that could be painted on.
Yeah, I guess the nature of my question is, I'm supportive of them. I think it's more, it feels more natural to me to have them grow from the corner and kind of stretch down instead of like randomly putting them in two different spots. But because this is a proposal before us, I'm okay with it. I think my preference would be if the Rockin' 2 and 6 one would actually fill more of the space. To go beam to beam, if the budget allows for that. Again, for that consistency, like there is a palette here where each artist can take a section, and rather than having it feel like, I think the eclecticness will work if there's consistency of the palette across. I guess is the point I'm trying to make. So.
Thank you. I would imagine that the artists would be open to that. I, of course, can't speak for them, but I would imagine that would be acceptable. So very happy to entertain that too.
I think that the dimensions can be provided to staff after this in the form of drawings. So I would be comfortable moving forward as long as we have some of those things in the motion.
Agreed.
May I ask that also a condition of any approval be that they have to provide us with a permission letter from the owners of the Archer before the work is to be started?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Petras. We will add that to our list. Thank you, Director Wong. We'll move on to Mr. Tarasik. I believe you had some questions.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman. No, I'm a big supporter of this as well, and of the murals on this wall. I go up and down actually this hill quite often, and I think what's done at the top of the hill that we recently approved not too long ago looks fantastic. I guess I would just echo the same comments that Director Wong and staff had as far as the dimensions of the project and what the borders of that project may be using that wall, so that there's a little bit more of, I want to say consistency is probably the wrong word, but so that it fits in the overall context, I think, of what's already there and then what's to come. So it doesn't almost look like a hodgepodge of different things thrown up on that wall from a size perspective, not from an art quality perspective, but just from a size perspective, that it's a little bit more consistent. I think Director Wong's comment about being consistent in the palette of that wall, I think, is very, very appropriate. So I'm supportive of this, and with the same, I concur with the same comments of Director Wong and staff.
Thank you, Mr. Tarasik. I would echo that, also that I think we want to make sure this feels like a gallery versus just, haphazard installations, with the long game in, long outlook of it, working with the architectural elements of the wall. And the bridge above. So I agree, and I'm also in support, but with the condition that an overall elevation with the overall master plan for this area of murals should be submitted prior to installation. Any other questions or comments from Mr. Sandberg?
I would like to question the type of paint and make sure that the paint is safe for the brick masonry. A lot of paints don't allow that brick to breathe and let water escape. Any moisture that gets into the brick gets trapped back there with a lot of the artist paints. There are paints out there that allow the brick to breathe, and I'd like to push to have more breathable paint if this is going to go through.
If I may address that briefly, I'm completely in accordance with that. The Graffiti Heart does have a good amount of experience with painting on this type of material. And again, this aerosol type of paint, as far as I have been led to believe, is that this is very breathable and very appropriate for the brick. But I could certainly, we will push and confirm and make sure that this is the best paint available for this type of surface.
Montana is a pretty reputable aerosol brand.
Okay. Excellent. Any other questions or comments from the commission?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just raised my hand. Ms. Bob
Oh,
Strickland.
Go
I
ahead,
have
Mr.
a
Strickland.
question about the lighting in that area. And if there's an opportunity to activate this space to promote pedestrian traffic. So I'm not sure exactly how it's currently lit, but if there's an opportunity to direct light onto the walls as these murals progress, I think that would help to activate the space.
Does the applicant have any response to that?
Sorry. As far as I'm aware, there is working lighting on that side. It's been replaced recently. I can't say with 100% certainty, but walking down there recently, it seems bright and safe. We'll certainly see what we can do about that. I think that would be a very good idea, but that's a little bit beyond the scope of the project, given that this is a funded art project. It doesn't have, the streetscape elements as part of that or the funding, but we'll certainly look into that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Strickland, any other questions or comments?
No, I understand, that the funding is limited to painting the murals, but I think whoever is responsible to consider additional lighting or focus lighting onto that wall might help activate the space, whoever is responsible for that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strickland. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Would someone like to put forward a motion?
Put forward a motion. I'd like to move to approve the project with the condition that the final drawings and documentation with dimensionality is provided to the staff in the form of, you need it to be architectural or not, just dimensions.
I think dimensions better. We'll help them provide
Okay.
drawings.
So to work with the staff to provide the drawings for the building and match the dimensionality of those two pieces with the documentation that the staff has. Second condition is to ensure that the Rockin' 216 piece is framed up with the building, the beams and the
Concrete banding.
the concrete
and/or
banding.
ceiling.
Similar to how the Monster Steve one is, so that it appears more gallery-like. And then I would just make a recommendation that in the future, there be additional paintings of different styles that would fill in the rest of the areas.
Do you want to
In a-
add
in a
the
plan.
letter of approval?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Tara. I would thank you to the secretary. With a third condition that there is a letter of approval from the building owners of the Archers building.
Would you entertain adding the submission of the paint products to staff for record also?
Yes, I would add a fourth condition, just the submission of the paint products that it appears to be in Montana, maybe with some of the colors that they might use. I think that can be submitted to staff.
Perfect. Excellent. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. We have a second. Any further discussion?
should we consider looking at a possible master plan for the entire wall as well? Before anything else, just let's go with these, get these
Sure.
finalized, and then let's look at the wall in total.
I think that's a good idea. Sorry to pile on. This is a recommendation. I suppose this is something that downtown Cleveland and Graffiti Park can work on for the future is, again, finding where you want to frame up this gallery of street art and identifying opportunities and timelines and things like that for the future. So that's a recommendation, not a condition. Are you comfortable with that? Okay.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
And I really think that it ought to really kind of grow from the corner. Like that's my recommendation as you do the timing is you start with the murals that you have and sort of grow towards the bottom of the hill. And that's just me though. So.
And you can work with staff to help document those through this process to allow these to move forward, but looking at the larger, longer duration of this area. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Musson, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmond,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Director Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Sandberry,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trasick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Ms. Trot.
Yes. I think we should use the chat.
Yeah, Dr. Williams, we can't hear you if you were trying to speak.
Yes.
There we go.
Can you hear
Okay.
me now?
Gotcha. Yep.
Yes,
Yeah, thank you. All right, Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
excellent. We look forward to the installation of the murals.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, you too. We'll move on to our next applicant located at 4129 Superior Avenue, East Preparatory Academy. Sign installation. I'd like to welcome the applicant. Please unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project. Do we have someone here representing this project? Who's the owner? Sure.
Not seeing- Maybe we
All right.
recall it later.
We are going to postpone reviewing that case until later, and we'll ask if the applicant's here. So we're going to move on to our third applicant, located at 10705 Drexel Avenue, Cox resident window replacement.
How's it going?
Good morning.
Good morning. Just a little overview of the project. We've come before for this property. They were looking to do vinyl windows on the front, and what we did was we ended up switching that to meet compliance. So we're doing a mixture of wood clad composite windows on the front of the home. Now to meet compliance, also doing the Oriole style where there currently isn't Oriole style, and then on the sides of the home, the plan was to do some vinyl windows, like it was mentioned. Like it was mentioned before that could be appropriate. The main reason why is because two of the Oriole style double hung windows on the sides are over 50 inches wide, which none of our wood manufacturers make a wood window that large or a composite window that large.
I apologize to interrupt. We just a point of order. We need to untable this before we move any further.
So if you don't mind just holding your presentation for 1 minute, and then you can continue. Since this was tabled, do we have a motion? Would someone like to make a motion to untable this?
I'll make a motion to untable.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have a second from, it looks like Mr. Strickland or Dryer? Unseconded, so we have a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmond, Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Director Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Sandberry,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trasick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Ms. Trout.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. Mr. Tammy, continue.
Sweet. Yeah, so as you can see above, any of those windows that are marked with a red number are going to be with the composite material. Any of them in the blue is going to be a wood clad material. If you want to go to the next page, that's going to be the front of the house. The storm windows are brown, but the windows underneath are white, so we are going to stick with the white trim, or with a white window. Andersen, who we're going to be using for this project primarily, they do not make a composite window in the Oriole style, and which is why we didn't do composite for those Oriole windows. You can do the next slide. You can see the whole rotunda there will be with either the wood clad or with the composite windows. Next slide. On the side and the back there was the plan to do vinyl. The big reason is because Andersen, who's our wood / composite company that we use, does not make a double hung operating window that is that large as the number 3 that you see there. And then if you go to the next slide, the same issue with that window right there. Then I believe I did attach in the email copies of the specification sheet. So as you can see, we're going to do the double hung Oriole style. This is for the back area. And then if you want to switch to the next. Yes, so, and then this is for the front of the home. We're going to be using the Andersen 100 series for all the upstairs and anywhere where it be applicable to use. And then if you want to go to the next page. We'll be using the Andersen tilt wash for those Oriole windows because they match very well with the 100 series. 100 series is designed to mimic that Andersen tilt wash look. So next page. Yeah, I believe that should be it.
All right, thank you for the updated presentation. We'll move on to design review committee recommendations.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Just to review, this was previously tabled, but when the design review committee saw it on June 15th, they did discuss making sure to have the window configuration, so the Oriole window that's discussed, retained and not double hung windows, and did discuss the preference for non-vinyl on the front, which has been possible.
Excellent, thank you. Landmark staff review.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff recommends approval with the condition that the applicant work with staff to finalize color selections.
Thank you, that was gonna be my question. Excellent, so then we will open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. I can't see, oh, Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to commend the applicant and the vendor for taking our prior comments under such complete consideration. And so I appreciate very much their changing the materials proposed for the front of the house, and now in favor of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strickland.
I'd like to add my thanks as well to the chair, through the chair, to the applicant, that our hope that is that this will retain the value of the historic nature of the homes and that it'll help provide that extra edge, as a historic home and in the historic district. So thank you very much for taking the comments seriously.
Thank you, Director Wong. Additional questions and comments from the commission? I would just echo the same thing. We appreciate you listening and working with the committee and the commission to meet the owner's objectives, but also retain the needs of the district. And my only open question is the color. And it sounds like you do not have that color selected yet. Is that correct? Or do you have the color selected?
So the color has been selected as white. In theory, sure, we could change the color, but if you look back at those pictures, the sashes, like the actual window, is white itself. It's just they have storm windows on the windows currently that are brown. So the windows themselves are white originally with brown storm windows. So we chose to do white to maintain the traditional or the original style of the home.
Yeah, and I guess, Madam Chair, we staff wanted the opportunity to, I guess, talk with the applicant about, what if the house is going to stay that same color, if there's a plan to change the color of the house to determine whether white, with this style of architecture could be appropriate, but it's going to depend on the paint scheme. So, yeah, we just wanted the opportunity to follow up with the owner and see if there were plans to paint and ensure that the windows followed that color scheme.
So may I ask a question? So this would be like a continuing the conversation type of discussion, because do they have plans to paint the house?
No, not at this point that we're aware of. So this would just sort of be in the future when you paint, what are you thinking? Do you have colors in mind kind of thing? Right. So if a motion did leave the final color selection of the windows up to staff, we feel that we could ensure that the appropriate ones were installed.
So does the applicant understand that request from staff? We'd like to have a long-term discussion with you about the owner's strategy related to the color of the house to assure that the window color that you're installing now works with a future color scheme that's appropriate for the house moving forward.
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Would someone like to put forward? Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are the existing windows in the house now original windows,
Yes, they are original windows. And like I said, the sashes themselves and the frame itself is white. It's only the storm windows that are a different color.
So the current exterior color of the sash is white.
Correct.
But if you probe down through, I'm sure there's multiple layers of paint, you might be able to uncover what might have been a more original color of that sash. So if you're going to work with Landmark staff in coming up with an appropriate color scheme for the future, I would suggest that you investigate what an original color of that sash might have been to help direct that discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Any additional questions or comments from the commission? Would someone like to put forward a motion? Mr. Admin? Oh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the submission be approved with the condition that they work with staff on the final color.
I think we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion?
I just want to ensure that the meeting happens quickly, because I don't want to hold up the owner from being able to purchase the windows, so the staff can follow up right away. Conscious of their timing and desire to move forward.
Great point. Any further discussion?
Quick question.
Yes.
Where would be the best place to reach out to the staff to confirm those colors with them?
Do you have their?
Yeah, we have the contact information of the property owner, so we can reach out to her after this meeting and, start that discussion.
So Landmark staff will reach out to the property owner to start that discussion with you, Mr. Tame, also, so that we can review the long-term strategy of the color scheme for the house and confirm the color of the windows. So they'll reach out in the next week
Or today.
But yeah.
or today,
Yeah, today or tomorrow, by the end of this week.
by the end of this week.
Now, just another.
Sorry.
Will we need to come back to another one of these review?
You will not.
Or-
No.
okay.
You are
Okay.
good.
Awesome.
So, any further questions from you, Mr. Tame?
No, you guys have been great. Thank you so much.
All right, well, we have one more point of order. We do need to have a motion put forward, and then we can vote on it, and then the process will be complete. Do we have a motion?
There is a
Oh, I'm
motion on the
sorry, we have a
table.
motion. I'm sorry.
From Mr. Edmund for the.
Sorry,
approval
sorry.
Condition
Jumped
that,
in with the comments.
Any additional comments? I was jumping ahead. So any additional comments from the commission? If not, Mr. Musson, please call roll.
all right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Director Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Sandberry,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yeah,
Mr. Trosick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Ms. Trot.
Yes,
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
thank you. And thank you, Mr. Tame.
Thank you.
We will move on to our next applicant located at 5454 Detroit Avenue, landscape lighting, paving, and plaza.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Excited to be back and show some of the progress of what we consider to be kind of a shared accomplishment. A lot of credit to this commission in the process. So these are a few items that were excluded from our approval a couple of years ago of the formerly Waverly and Oak project, now Wellion, on Detroit Avenue between 54th and 58th Streets. We can just flip through a couple of these. Just wanted to show a little bit of where we are today. Keep going, please. So it's a couple side by sides of the renderings that were presented in February, March, April of 2021, and where we are as of a couple weeks ago. We can flip through the next slide, and we'll keep going. Our plan is to move residents in about a month. So we are nearing the finish line. Keep going, please. And again. And one more. Okay, so the items that were excluded to come back once we were kind of a little bit further along in design. One was the exterior lighting plan for the building, the landscape plan for the pocket park that was added as part of the surface lot addition later in the process. And the third being the courtyard and plaza design, which is kind of a intended to be a public space, but is privately owned. So we can continue forward. So we'll start with the exterior lighting. We went pretty subdued on exterior lighting overall. Each of the balconies will have their own individual controllable light, but on the building level exterior, kept it relatively simple with this vertical lighting element. Continue on. Here's how it looks in rendering. And next slide, please. So that was on the east face of the building. on the Detroit facing facade, again, wanted to keep it relatively subdued. The storefront lighting is again a similar sleek modern black fixture and down lighting for the facade. Next slide, please. And how it looks, or how it will look. Next slide, please. Landscape plan for the pocket park, which sits on the Detroit sidewalk. Part of what was added to this plan was the surface lot for residents, kind of surrounding what was formerly the Minon building, which is currently Banter. Through the design review process, particularly at the lower level, at the local level. We can go to the next slide, please. What we heard a lot through that process was the desire for this landscape area to be more greenery and lush than it is anything like a functional park. That was the desire of the local level. So you can see here the detailed landscape plan that is intended to do a couple things. One of which is to the main function being kind of to shield the parking itself from the view of the street and from the pedestrian experience. So there's next slide, please. We look to take cues from our neighbors, our immediate neighbors. On the top left of the screen, you'll see how Gordon Green has approached their landscape area and their fencing. And then Templin Bradley to the west of us, how they are handling their landscape as well. So we wanted to complement those plans. So we're using essentially the same fence proposed by that's in use at Gordon Green, which sits amongst the landscaping. Now, if the landscaping does what it's intended to do and what it's designed to do, the fence itself is really supplemental. The landscaping should hold its own for the purposes of kind of shielding that view. Next slide, please. Just some more details on the specific plant life that's been chosen for this use. Next slide, please. And lastly, the courtyard design, where we ended up. Next slide, please. So again, part of what we did with this design is open up pedestrian traffic from Detroit through to Tillman. And the way we're doing that is through a raised paver system. So these are 2 by 2 foot by 2 foot concrete pavers, where you can see a sample of the actual product in green. The aesthetic of that is supposed to feel like a flow from the sidewalk, right? So we really do want to draw the public into this space. So wanted that to feel like an extension of the public right of way. And then the darker product in the central courtyard. Next slide, please. We wanted to maintain flexibility in the courtyard as well, from a use perspective. The plan itself is to not have any large fixed pieces of furniture, which is actually shown in this rendering, which is not entirely accurate, and to go to more of a floating, and this is again from our conversations at the local level, to more of a floating furniture concept and use, that the space can function as it needs to for public events, for shared space. We have a commercial tenant who has leased a lot of space that will be announced shortly, that we really want to work with that tenant on how the space can be used for the public benefit. So what you see here is really focused on the lighting plan for the courtyard. What you see, the yellow circles are in the top right, the kind of a modern, sleek light bollard. And then the masonry wall, that's a brick wall to match the brick surrounding the building, is washed with light as well from the top. And then everything else will be flexible. Next slide, please. Last slide. That's it. Look forward to comments, questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We will then move on to design review comments. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. We will move on to design review committee recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project was reviewed on June 21st at the Historic West Cleveland Design Review Committee. They did discuss quite a few of the elements, fixtures in black. They were in support of there's a lot of discussion about the furniture after use hours, with it being bundled at night or usable for the public, and courtyard lighting timing for like 24 hours. And they also discussed the pavers and the request for more detail on the plaza, as well as the Club Azteca, where it came up, the Club Azteca had in earlier concept more evidence in the courtyard, and so that has changed, so that was discussed as well. And overall, they were in support of it with little details returning in the future as it continues on.
Excellent, thank you. Move on to Landmark's staff review.
Thank you, Madam Chair. See, this has been a long process that we have seen this twice before. And this is what we're looking at is mostly on phase 1, but the secondary pocket park is on phase 2. So the lighting plan we feel is good, it's appropriate, it's understated, and keeping low levels of light is good. Staff is a little disappointed with the downgrading of the plaza. I know originally they had done a pretty large proposal, which was ambitious, but part of this whole thing was to somehow honor Club Azteca's history on this site, and I don't know what has been done to that. So I think we would want more information about that. The pocket park that has been proposed is not really a pocket park anymore. It's more acting as a landscape strip, which meets the intent of the PRO, because this is what we have here. But some things we want to make sure that the green that is proposed doesn't block views at that driveway for safety reasons. They've removed, I think, the bike parking that was proposed earlier. How has that been replaced elsewhere on the site? Still would like, it is a landscape strip, it has no public engagement. So maybe somehow putting 1 or 2 benches in there, I think would be enough to meet the original intent. Doesn't have to have all the pathways and such, but have it be engageable by in some way to that. But overall, we're happy with the outcomes and the support with some additional documentation and explanation.
Okay. Thank you. Then we'll open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments.
Should I take a moment to address some of the overall comments?
Sure. If you'd like to respond to those, yes, that'd be great.
Sure. So since we're on this slide, we'll talk about the park a little bit. This was our proposed plan prior to our initial meetings at the local level. And what was suggested to us was that we take more of a landscape strip approach versus anything with additional hardscaping. Absolutely point taken on adding potentially some benches, and that could make sense. The ultimate design where we ended up was entirely a response to local feedback. And then on the Azteca portion, that courtyard design that you pulled up was in advance of our ultimate agreement with the coalition, wherein we're still in communication with the former members of Club Azteca, and still working through and would love to include historical markers on site. I'm still working with them on how and where the old original signage will be used, that we've offered to discuss. We're open to that. There was, if you remember at that time, there was the decision made by the coalition that they would prefer funds that were intended to go towards, or proposed by us to go towards, kind of a plaza design, to go towards funding of a fund within the Cleveland Foundation. So those funds had to be redirected, essentially. So that's where we ended up and how we got to where we are today. And happy to answer any questions about any of that.
Sure. I think something that maybe you would want to see that documentation, but I would recommend looking at an Ohio historical marker, signature what's next.
Absolutely.
I think that's even though they're not, I think they're about what, $4,000 or something like that. I think that would be something to work on. I think that would be enough for me to acknowledge that history on that site and actually have actually give you a heritage point for people to visit. So that would actually probably draw more people to the location as well.
And that is our intention.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about the Club Azteca, just sort of any kind of salvage you were able to retain? And I'm just curious, given that the conversation has shifted with the coalition, are there moments where the salvage could be integrated somehow into, not really sure would fit into the green space, but perhaps the plaza? I think there could be a really cool modern way to integrate it, but I'm just curious kind of what are the artifacts that you do have besides the signage?
Yep. So the only ones that are in our possession is the signage that we're essentially just warehousing until the members of Club Azteca can find a place for it.
Okay.
The rest of the salvage from the actual property, we never had possession of. That was the coalition handled, kind of the reclamation of that. I honestly, I don't know where it is today.
Okay.
Okay. But I mean, I agree that it could be, yeah, it's a cool idea. And
yeah,
we're open to it.
Understand. Thank you for answering the question.
Sure.
And thank you for the responses. We will then now open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Mr. Edmond?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would certainly echo, and actually this is a good slide to look at, but I would certainly echo the Carl's comments about maybe getting some benches in that little greenery area, particularly if they could be pulled off of the sidewalk a little bit, so there's a bit of room, and if they could possibly be perhaps under those deciduous shade trees, so there's some shade, so that you have a little respite along the streetscape there. I also had a question on, I think it's slide 15, which is sort of the overall site plan slide. It's not clear to me what's happening sort of in the middle of the plaza. Wait, actually, that's either one of those is good. But in the sort of middle of the orange area, there's a different sort of hatching with some vertical lines. It looks like maybe it's a raised seating area or something. It's not clear what's happening there. Is that just a change in pavement or something?
Yeah, so what's shown in the drawing, which is not accurate, is a large furniture installation. The direction we ended up going was to create more flexibility in the space. So the next slide is a little bit more representative, even though the drawing is the same, but really we want to go to these, call it Bryant Park style tables and chairs that can be moved for, outdoor yoga or farmers markets or, any of those kinds of community events, or, relating to our Club Azteca conversations, their use of the courtyard for some of their annual events.
And then, so in that lower left image, do you have some of those large planters around, or is it just a continuous surface?
So part of this, the rear space where you can kind of see in plan where there's tables and chairs towards the south of the courtyard, that is that space that can be used by the tenant, the commercial tenant. So the renter kind of represents a suggestion, but that's going to be largely determined by who goes into that space and how they want to use it.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Can you just answer, just to follow up on Mr. Edmonds' question, are like the green circles, and I'm sorry, I'm looking up on the screen ahead of me, are those landscape areas or planters included, or is it just full hardscape for the entire area? I see the lighting along the wall and the bollards in the center, but the green circles that are in the middle.
Yeah, the green circles is really just a suggestion. There's what we'd like to do there is mobile planters, nothing that's going to be substantial in scale, nothing that's going to be fixed in place.
And it's such
Again,
as, go ahead.
It's we wanted to maintain flexibility there, limited in what we can do from a landscaping perspective, because this is above the garage. So because of the concrete deck system, we can only do so much because we did bury the parking.
Right. And you haven't accommodated the weight for large landscaped areas or planters, correct? Is that why you're going smaller?
Yeah, I think, yeah, large, I think, is probably relative. We can do some smaller, medium size, similar to what you see here.
Well, I personally would encourage you to do some type of landscaping planters in here to really soften it up. So I think the intentions are good, but I think it's going to feel very hard and stark when it's not in use.
Sure.
So I personally feel like you should look at incorporating some multiple small planters to really soften this area up and make it in function for both the larger events, but also at the smaller use also. And then related to the landscape buffer along Detroit, can I ask why you're doing a solid fence to the parking? Down the streets, the Gordon Greens, they have a solid fence there, which is like, I think, a 6 foot, which feels appropriate because there's functions. There's a private outdoor seating area right there that's part of the use. What's the purpose of the solid fence at the parking lot?
Sure, so we can go to that slide if it's helpful, back one or two. Our other direction, I think. One more, please. So,
right there?
Yep, perfect. So the way we thought about it was a continuation of two things. One was a continuation of the fencing at Gordon Green to feel cohesive. The second was, our interpretation or our understanding of the PRO, which is to limit the visual of surface parking. So that we do think that the landscaping, once matured, will do that. But we do think that this fence is going to be needed if that's the desired goal of the fencing and PRO. If it's not, and that's we misinterpreted that, we can look again at a different type of fence, something with more openness, if that's preferred. But that was, again, our interpretation of one, the desire to create a cohesive aesthetic along the block, and then two, to actually visually shield the surface parking.
Because they're contiguous next to each other, so your fence and their fence will be next to each other and connected?
Yeah, I think if you look at where the fence aligns with theirs, that was the intention.
Got it. Just a personal preference, I think, I'm not a big fan of the fence because I think it feels like you're cutting off, and the public from it. It's a public pocket park, but then you have a fence blocking it off. I understand the intentions, but my personal opinion is I'm split on if it should actually be there or not.
And sure. Is your just to be clear on my understanding. So the fence itself is set back about 2/3 of the way into the landscaping. Point taken that it is intended to be a public space. And again, once the landscaping grows in, I think that should take care of the visual shielding. If the commission thinks that's sufficient to have landscaping without a fence, we're open to that as well.
Can you explain? Can you show the depth of the green space going into the lot?
The depth of the green space going into the lot. Yeah, I think at its deepest point, it's 37 feet. So I would guess it's around 30 feet. I think one of our earlier plans actually had the dimension on there. I don't see it here, but since the earlier drawings were included, it's probably in this presentation somewhere. I just don't have it on hand.
I'll just add one thing, and Justin, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the intent in future is that this is also built upon. There is that option for building another structure there. Future, they just want, because really that was it.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, and part of there's also a fence that borders our parking lot and the Gordon Green event space, which is intended to be this as well, and that's more to serve functionally because they do host events over there. So that's part of this as well. But again, if the preference is to be entirely landscaping, include a couple benches to make it more welcoming, remove the fence, I think that's something we're open to as well.
Yeah, so you've accomplished the PRO with your depth. I think the intent of it, the PRO really just is to activate it.
Okay.
And I believe that the landscaping will provide the appropriate screening. And I can't remember, and this is just something we'll have to double check if there's an opacity requirement or not with PRO. I don't think there is. So I think it would be accomplished without the fence coming through the green space area. Oh, Shannon's on. Chair, may I defer to Shannon, our chief zoning planner?
Yes,
knows
please.
all about this.
Shannon, can you help us with this one? Help make sure we're clear on the requirements.
Yeah, good morning, Shannon Leonard. As the director stated, you're beyond 40 feet in, so you do not need a fence to obscure the parking. This is different than the urban form overlay. If there's a fence at all, if you have a fence, generally when it's fronting a major street like Detroit, they ask that it's no more than 4 feet or 50% open. Because you have landscaping to really do the screening here. Okay. I agree that a fence is maybe not necessary.
Thanks, Shannon.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Director Leonard. So those are my comments. Other commissions, questions or comments? Not hearing anyone, so would someone like to put forward a motion?
It's just a point of order before any motions are made. There are actually two cases here because we're revisiting two previous cases. So case 21-012 is for the plaza, the landscaping, the lighting, and then we'll need a separate motion for case 22-026, which is the pocket park. Shown on the slide here is how it breaks down. So if we could treat those separately, that would be
perfect. All right, great point of order. Thank you. Would someone like to make a motion related to the landscape lighting and paving within the plaza?
I'll try to make a motion on this one. Feel free to add to it, fellow commissioners. I move to approve the phase 21-021 as presented with the conditions that there be small to medium landscaping added to the kind of low seating areas above the parking deck, that there would be documentation of the discussion between the Club Azteca coalition and the developer related to the discussions around the fund and the salvage, the honoring the space. Also, the condition that the applicant would apply for the Ohio Historic Marker in a future round. And I believe that may be it for this phase. Is there anything else that we've seen?
I agree. That's all I noted.
Okay, great.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you. We have a second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Director Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Sandberry,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trasick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams, and Ms. Trout.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. We'll move on to our next motion for the next case, 22026, which is related to the landscaping on Detroit. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve 22026 with the condition that the applicant work with staff for the placement of benches in the green space, one or two this time, and that the removal of the fence along the green space and the Detroit frontage specifically, that the fence along the Detroit frontage be removed in the green space.
Can I make one recommendation that to revise it from benches to seating, so it gives them some
Sure.
flexibility?
Yep, great point. Yes, I'll accept the change.
So we have,
And sorry to interrupt. Can I just ask a question just for clarity on the request to remove the fence? Is there, because it was described that if there is to be fence, that it's, 50% open and no more
Yeah,
than
there is a motion. There's a motion on the table. Can we see if there's a second and then open
Sure.
it back up for discussion?
right, so
I'll
we have,
second that motion.
I'll second.
all right, thank you. We have a second. And then, I'm sorry, Mr. Sorry, I'm losing my voice here. Can you repeat your question now?
The question is, I think security is another component of the fence. So if there is within the motion, it's to remove the fence, but if the fence has to be 4 feet high and at least 50% open, is that an alternative that we can explore as well?
Yeah, that's allowable by code. So
Okay.
yes, please work with staff on that.
Great.
So we'll amend the motion to say either remove or revise the fence to a 4-foot, 50% opacity fence.
Mr. Strickland, already seconded that.
Mr. Strickland, you
I'll second.
Agree with that?
Revised motion.
excellent. So we have a motion, or we have approval of that. Any further discussion by the commission? All right, Mr. Musson, please call the roll.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray, Director Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Sandberry. Yes. Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trasick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Ms. Trout.
Yes,
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
excellent. We look forward to seeing your project move forward.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next applicant located at 6601 Franklin Boulevard, lighting, landscaping, and signage at the Joseph Gallagher School.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. Is there going to be a review of what happened in design review, or should I go through the presentation?
Do the full presentation.
Okay. All right. So with my team, we have Ken Lochner and Alex Metcalf with AVG. And then we also have from landscaping, we have Andrew Steingas and Donald Johnson from Osborne Engineering. And Holly Del Sante from the school district is on, Tim Rainey from Green Space. So again, we're back here for, next slide, please. We're back here for final landscaping, parking plan, signage, site lighting, and that's what we're here for. So with that, I am going to ask that Andrew speak about the site plan, which has basically remained the same since our last presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Murtaza. My name is Andrew Steingas. I'm representing Banky Landscape Architecture. Right here on our screen now is the overall rendered site plan, which has remained largely the same since we were last in front of you. The one thing I would really like to draw your attention to here is the parking and vehicular circulation layout. We took into account comments from previous design and landmarks reviews that the parking lot at the southeast corner of the site should be a one-way exit out to West 65th. So we have revised and accommodated that accordingly. Next slide, please. This is the landscape plan. We've been working very closely with Holly with the school district and with Jennifer Kipp in the tree preservation department on this landscape plan. This landscape plan essentially focuses on trees and grasses, which was a request from the school district because those are the types of plants that they have the best success in maintaining, and we want to make sure that we have a successfully maintained landscape plan moving forward. Please go to the next slide. This is an image board showing the different types of plants that will be on the site. And as I previously stated, you can see that this is a tree and grass focused planting plan. Next slide, please. These are our site furnishings, which are very typical for a CMSD project. These have all been reflected in previous projects and previous iterations. The bike racks, benches, trash receptacle, and ornamental fence. The color on those will all be black. The ornamental fence will be around the two play areas, both the PK to K play area and the grade school play area. And then also around the track and open field. This project will have two areas of concrete seating elements. Those are the outdoor classroom areas. They will be multicolored as shown below. And then also for your reference, there are the traffic signs that will be inside the site. Next slide, please. And then this is just a review of the site plan showing various site elements and where various activities will be happening. So I'll turn it back over to Murtaza.
Okay. Next slide, please. So just an overall where we are with the project. I'm sure many of you are aware if you've driven past Franklin. All this brick that you see in these renderings are gone, and basically what's left is the structural frame and the stairwell brick, which we're basically adding on top of on the four corners. And so the exterior of the building has remained unchanged. We've just basically added detailing and looking at the building envelopes. So I think we can kind of go through these slides relatively quick because on our last presentation, we did have approval on this. So today we're focused more on the site. We submitted to the city about a month ago, and so we're in bidding phase right now. Green Space is sending this out to all the bidders. So we're hoping to the Green Space team is hoping to award bids in I think about 2-3 weeks. So on the front entrance of Franklin, we're proposing to have 24-inch cast metal letters on standoffs and with an anodized aluminum finish. This was one of the comments that came from the design review meeting last week. Was the color of it was white in the previous presentation, and their comments, which we took a look at and agreed, was an anodized aluminum finish to match the aluminum frames would be a better match. So that's basically the change that we made. It's 24-inch on Franklin. And then on this east elevation, the other comment with the lettering was just to match the text, which we did. We made it a little bit smaller because this is a 2-story portion, but it's at the same height as the front elevation. So we took kind of all the comments that we heard from design review regarding the signage and agreed and made those updates. All right, we can keep going. And then I'm going to have Donald from Osborne Johnson speak regarding the site lighting.
Good morning. So this first slide here on the electrical side is our photometric plan. We kind of include a point-by-point spaced at 10-foot by 10-foot grid per IES recommendations for exterior lighting. And then in the bottom left corner, you'll see our statistic table for the results of the photometric. Next slide, please. Here we've taken that photometric and kind of done almost like a heat map, kind of showing the different illuminance levels based off of where we place the lighting fixtures. And this also includes the existing street lighting. Next slide, please. And this slide indicates the 3 types of lighting we have visible on the site. We have a recessed downlight within the canopies, a wall pack, and the typical pole-mounted area light, all using LED light sources. I believe one comment from the review last week was that the finish should be black, and that will be incorporated as well.
Thank you. That's pretty much all we have for this presentation.
All right, thank you for the presentation. We'll move on to Design Review Committee recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project was reviewed last week on July 19th with the Historic West Cleveland Design Review Committee. It was approved with considerations for the signage height on West 65th to be raised to the same level as the Franklin elevation, the text to be consistent on both elevations for signage. They did discuss the color for the signs as well as the color for the lighting as mentioned, and they mentioned a consideration for alternate gates, as the original gates were fixed gates at the track or including self-closing gates for the track just for security and things like that. But overall approved, and we're looking forward to seeing the school complete.
Excellent, thank you. We'll move on to Landmark staff review.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff supports the landscape proposal as presented, and we should note that the city's urban forester, Jennifer Kipp, said that this was a good example of a tree preservation plan and has used this as an example, so should kudos to the team here. The signage and lighting is appropriate. and in line with the recommendation of the design review committee. And we should also note, we are also happy to see that the applicants were able to actually gain more recess on the windows that we reviewed last time. It was more flush, and they actually brought it back a little bit more with the original. Although it's not as much as the original was, they did get some recess on them, so we were happy with that. So we would recommend approval as presented.
Excellent, thank you. We'll open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments.
So Chair, may I ask a question about the gates and what the difference is now in the gates? I think Jessica had mentioned from the design review. Do you know, can you explain sort of before and after?
They mentioned the gates were like standing gates you had to move through.
Yeah.
To get in and out of there. And then, in design review, they mentioned that new proposed gates were, I believe, self-closing gates, so that way it still isn't, just an open gate swinging.
Oh, okay, I see. And that's preferred, like a self-closing gate is preferred? Or?
I think they prefer a fixed gate, which is what was there, but they just wanted to see consideration for alternate gate style. So they didn't have a set preference on the previous one, they just kind of wanted to see their preference.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Edmond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of parking questions. The parking area to the southeast, it looks like, if I'm reading it correctly, that there's an in and out onto Bridge, but only an out onto West 65th. Is that correct?
Correct.
It seems like it might make more sense to just have an in off of Bridge. I think the circulation within the parking area would be a lot cleaner, and if that's the only way in, but people also go out there, then people must be turning around in there. So I think particularly at like maybe pick up and drop off times, I think it would be a lot simpler if the traffic just flowed directly through without going back. And then the other one, and this is maybe a small thing, but the ADA parking spaces off of Franklin, the last one particularly seems to be awfully close to where the sidewalk is and where people are coming in, so that when someone's backing out of that space, I think it might be hard to negotiate that and to kind of see, kids and other traffic there. I would recommend maybe sliding that closer to the entry. I think having those as close to the entry and having the path from the ADA spaces to the entry as clean and simple and short as possible would be a good thing. The other 5 spaces at the other end might want to slide in a little bit too.
Those are great comments, Mr. Edmond. Right now, that's outside the scope that we're talking about today, but those are great points.
Okay. Then that's all of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edmond. Other questions and comments from the commission? Oh, yes.
No. I just want to say I'm glad to see the improvements that's coming to Gallagher. I'm just going to say that my youngest son went to Gallagher many years ago. I was a volunteer teacher at that time, but I am impressed to see the improvements and the landscaping and the architectural that they're going to bring to the school. So,
excellent. Thank you for that feedback. Other questions and comments from the commission?
I have a question for the school district and kind of their policy on non-school hours and the community accessing the lawn and the play areas. So the architects, do you know what their policy is on that?
I just want to give Holly Delasante a chance to respond if she's available.
Hi, this is Holly Delasante with the Cleveland School District. Our playgrounds and green space are open year round to the community.
All right, thank you very much.
Other questions?
It's a great asset. It's we consider our partnership with the school district to be essential for 10-minute walks to green spaces and playgrounds. So I'm glad to hear that for this site. Thank you.
I have a point of question. you have two different renderings that show signage on Franklin, one in the banding, one in line with those. Just wanted to clarify which location it's going to be.
The blow up, which shows it in between the banding, is the correct location. So if we, yeah, so which would match this height. So if we keep going back a little bit, yes, this one.
Thank you.
Okay. I think this aligns with what the intentions were from the beginning. So I'm in support of what's being proposed, and also appreciate the care that they've taken to work with the community. Other questions and comments from the commission, or would someone like to put forward a motion?
Let me just correct something I said. I was a volunteer parent aide at the school, so.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes, for the record. So.
Other questions or comments from the commission, or someone like to put forward a motion?
I can put forward a motion to.
That would be great.
Oh, Bob, I don't want to steal your thunder. Go ahead, Bob.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to put forward a motion to approve as presented, with the consideration that they study the entrance off of Bridge and consider changing that to a one-way entrance only apron. And I'll need some help if there's any other conditions or recommendation.
May I suggest we look at the design review recommendations?
Just were there any outstanding items from the committee recommendations that have not been addressed yet in what we saw today?
One item that was not addressed was the gates.
Okay.
Everything else was.
So the, Mr. Strickland, would you consider adding the condition to study the gates
Yes,
as a recommendation?
study the design review committee's consideration of alternate gates.
Correct. Right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion, or we have a second. Any further discussion? Not hearing or seeing any. Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmond,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Director Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Sandbury,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yeah,
Mr. Trosick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Ms. Trout.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. We look forward to seeing your these incorporated into your project.
Appreciate everything that you guys do. Thank you. Thank you. I have one quick question. Does this go to the building department now for their review of the permit package?
Yes, yeah, that would be your next step, but we can follow up this afternoon, see if there's anything else you need. Oh, yeah, and I guess just as a heads up, Acela is down for upgrades of the online permitting system, so.
Yeah, I noticed that today.
Next week is probably your better bet.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that's what
Monday, yeah, Monday it should be back up and running.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next applicant located at 4116 Lorraine Avenue, Proof Restaurant and Bar renovation. Ms. Staub, welcome. Please unmute your mic and just announce yourself, and please tell us about your project.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lucas Steib. I'm with AODK Architecture. I'm here representing the project at 4116 Lorraine Avenue. Also on the call, we have the owner of the building and restaurant, Dave Ferrante. This is the presentation that was provided to the Ohio City Design Review Committee over the past few weeks. Toggle through here. The Proof Restaurant and Bar is an existing entity that actually closes stores in Tremont in preparation for its move to this location on Lorraine. Dave Ferrante purchased the building that was formerly Nick's Diner at 4116 Lorraine, which you're seeing here at this aerial. Next slide, please. Just some property information from the GIS regarding the parcel. Next slide. Here is a photo of Nick's Diner when it was in operation. This was from Google Street View. We've since obtained a selective demolition permit just to clean things out and remove this awning in preparation for the renovation that's to come. Here is an image of the building as it stands today. So as you can see in this photo, the storefront that was in use at Nick's Diner was not historic. You know, it was a renovation that was done later. Our goal, as you'll see in our floor plans and our renderings, is to put an all-new storefront that is back to the historic context with the center entrance with a slight jog in the front, which provides kind of two window bays and is more historically accurate to this building. There's a fair amount of existing photos in this. That was a request from the design review committee, so we can toggle through them pretty quickly. But the goal here, while we're looking at it, is we've hired Kuhn Restoration to analyze the existing masonry conditions. There'll be a full restoration of both all three exposed sides of this building to make sure there's no water infiltration, some selective tuck pointing. And I think we'll get to a slide here that describes Kuhn's proposed work and restoration. This is the area in the back. There were some additional photos requested again by the design review committee. There was a small addition put onto this building when it was Nick's Diner. The plan is to use this small addition as part of the restaurant, but the work is pretty shoddy currently, so we're going to propose removing all the existing windows and siding. This is from the inside looking out. So this will be a much more structurally sound, much more insulated addition on the back of the building when it's all said and done. And the owner is hoping to utilize the existing patio that came with the building that you see in these photos. This is just a view from street view from the back alley, showing that there's no kind of visual connection from the alley or the adjacent properties to the patio or that addition. This is the proposed work from Kuhn Restoration. Again, the design review committee asked for a little bit more explanation, which Matt was able to provide us, and they seem satisfied with. And then here are documents that are currently submitted to the city. They kind of initiated this process with the design review committee and now here at Landmarks Commission. So it's demolition work. The next slide should be the proposed renovation floor plans. So maintaining the front area as the main dining area and bar. You can see on the right side there the new storefront where it jogs in and centers the entrance back to its original historic context. And then utilizing that back addition area for some additional seating and proposing a new overhead garage door to open up to the patio when the weather's nice. All new kitchen in here as well, but maintaining the original kitchen location. New roof has been put on it to prevent any further water infiltration, and we'll be doing an all new HVAC and exhaust system when the restaurant is underway. The next slide shows the exteriors of the building, the proposed exteriors of the building. We are proposing, like I said, a new storefront, a new awning. That was another further detail was requested from the design review committee, and when provided, I think everyone was happy with the detailing of it. And the height. We are, just trying to, if you remember that the photo of what's currently there, we are maintaining the existing masonry opening. The steel lintel is in good shape. It's been assessed by our structural engineer, so we will literally be removing the wood infill that exists and just putting an all new storefront in the existing masonry opening, and we think it'll look really sharp. And then I think we have some, there's, a few more construction documents just for detailing, and then a fair amount of renderings of the proposed renovation as well. So we will be, submitting this signage vendor will be coming, submitting to the city for a new sign permit when the time comes. This review is purely just for the renovation work. This is showing that new storefront system from the inside, and that new center entry. Hoping to maintain the exposed brick on the inside and create some new built-in booths and banquettes for diners. And then this is that back area, new cladding, making sure that the walls are insulated and weather tight, and the new garage door out to the patio. And then just some, basic upkeep. I think we'll be doing a new fence along the patio. There is an existing fence. It's kind of falling apart, so we'll be proposing a new fence, trying to maintain as much of the existing brickwork as possible, and patching and repairing where possible. The building that you're seeing on the left, this was a question that came up in the design review committee, is the adjacent building, which is, I believe, a tattoo parlor. So we don't really have the authority to do any work on that building, but there was talk about kind of making sure that that the vines could be maintained as part of the aesthetics of the patio. And this is a night rendering from the front, and open to any questions. Just one further comment, would say that we submitted our documents in May, and started some early conversations with the storefront committee, or the storefront rebate program, and just based off timing with our client and the owner of the building, it wasn't going to work out, but they did seem satisfied with the aesthetics. But I think Dave is just hoping to get this restaurant renovated and open up as soon as possible. So we've had a nice discussion with the Ohio City Design Review Committee, and now we're before you guys in hopes to achieve a building permit.
Great, thank you for the presentation. We'll move on to Design Review Committee recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project was reviewed last week by the Ohio City Design Review Committee. They did approve with the recommendation to lower the bulkhead and for staff to approve the final colors and siding materials.
Great, thank you. And then we'll move on to landmark staff review.
And thank you, Madam Chair. Staff feels that the bulkhead is inappropriately high and should be limited to a height of no more than, say, 20 inches from grade. We also feel that the solid wood door shown in the renderings is inappropriate. The door should be primarily a glass door with the height of the glass matching the bulkhead, or even if it comes a little lower and just has a kick plate, that would be an appropriate commercial door. We understand the signage will come back for approval, under a different permit and review. So really, aside from questions about drainage of the canopy, we're also comfortable with the addition of the canopy, as it's easily reversible. So.
Thank you. We'll now open up the, Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Got it. And I'm traveling between meetings, so please forgive me. I'm on the phone, but thank you. I just wanted to speak in support of this project, Madam Chair, and thank the consideration of the board, the commission, excuse me. This is a great local business owner who has invested significantly in the city of Cleveland with some really thoughtful project.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilman. We appreciate the.
I'm sorry, are you there?
Yes, we are. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just saying it'll be a welcome renovation to this stretch of Lorraine Avenue, and really excited about this new establishment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman McCormick. We'll now open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Mr. Edmund.
Madam Chair, as is so often the case, the staff comments are already said part of what I wanted to say, but I would certainly echo and second all those comments about the storefront, the bulkhead height, and particularly that door, which that opaque door really bothers me, and it does look quite residential. I noticed in the architectural elevation, it looked like that was shown as half glass, which I think would be much better. I do want to talk a little bit about the canopy. I think, by the way, I think this is all quite handsome. I like doing that sort of period appropriate storefront layout with the recessed door. I think Danny mentioned the water drainage issue off of the canopy, and that needs to be thoughtfully handled. One thing is, I don't know if they intend to have a downspout there, which would kind of, mess up the facade. And also, you don't want to be just putting water down on the sidewalk. So I don't know if that's going to be handled internally, but it needs to be done very thoughtfully. Also, vis-a-vis the canopy, it looks like in the night rendering, there's not a lot of downlighting. Obviously you want the interior to be bright, but you also want to have lighting on the walking surface as well. There's also, in the night rendering, there's uplighting, which is nice, except where you have the sign, and I know this sign isn't really part of this, but it puts the sign in shadow where the way it's rendered, at least. So be cognizant of that, because it looks like the sign's not illuminated. And I did want to just confirm the 3 stripes that are behind the sign. Is that sort of part of the signage? That's not something you're doing in the masonry, is that correct?
Yeah, I'll start with that comment and try and go through the list of all of them. Yes, that's correct. The 3 horizontal bands that you're seeing would be part of the signage. We both like the aesthetics. It kind of has a retro feel that is in line with some of the elements of the design of the restaurant, but also it's a very functional sense in working with the signage vendor and providing raceways for the electrical. If you could go back to the night rendering, because I think it's in line with some of your other comments as well. We agree. The goal here is to not have the uplighting from the canopy shining up and creating that shadow effect. We would definitely want to have the sign itself be backlit or halo lit, and not have that, again, part of the signage submittal where this rendering isn't showing it accurately. You'd also mentioned downlighting from the canopy. That is in the architectural documents, so that is a good point, and we'll make sure that the entrance and walking path are lit appropriately, and those will be recessed lights within the canopy. Comment about the door, we agree that was something that came up in our discussions with Tim Barrett at the storefront program when that was being considered, and you had mentioned it is in the architectural documents. There'll be a glass panel in the upper portion of that door. Drainage, you mentioned. I think that's duly noted. Yeah, I think that needs to just be thought out in a way so that it doesn't spill out onto the sidewalk. Something that would probably be internalized and then go out through some form of storm within the building, but we'd have to work through that detailing, but we agree. And I think the only other comment was something that it was brought up in the design review committee. It was the height of the bulkhead. I know they kind of suggested a lowering of that as well, and we're happy to consider that. Just making sure, and I pointed out in the design review committee, the reasoning for the height as it's shown is because of the built-in booths just inside it. It's kind of a fully integrated design. We do realize that we could lower the bulkhead, and it would just be showing more of the back of the booths through the window, which would be fine. We just feel like it's less of an integrated design, less of a thoughtful design. But if it's part of the requirements, we'd be happy to look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edmond. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, like to say that we are going to miss having proof in the Tremont neighborhood, but certainly looking forward to visiting this new location on Lorraine. And my wife and I miss having Dave as our neighbor in Tremont as well. I'm sure he's enjoying his new home on Scranton.
It's still technically Tremont.
Right, you're still in Tremont, so you're still a neighbor. All right, so and I was going to make a comment about the bulkhead, and I wondered, we've reviewed several projects along Lorraine, and we've had the benefit of historical photos on many of those projects, and I wondered if there were any historical photos to reference with regard to this proposed storefront. I like the recessed entrance, and I wondered if there was any physical evidence in investigating the existing, flooring or whatever to provide evidence that a recessed entrance was historical to this building.
Yeah, there's still physical evidence. There's the concrete trapezoid, if you will, where the old entrance used to be under the floor, and the reinforcement in the basement for that entrance. So we'll be reworking that to make sure it's structurally sound and watertight. But yes, plenty of historical physical evidence of that centered entry, which we like. Unfortunately, no photographs of the storefront in our research with the storefront rebate program.
Okay, but I think that the proposed layout with the transom panels continuing right through that entrance, and then the raised bulkhead. So based on your explanation about the booths on the interior, I personally don't have a problem with the height of the bulkhead, given its functionality to support the interior design. And but we're very much looking forward to this project moving forward. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strickland. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a wonderful improvement to this building. We have an agreement with staff. The door is too opaque. I thought about repurposing the door that's there, the vintage door, but that vintage door is really more appropriate for a residential property. So just having a light door would probably work better here. I'm in agreement with staff on the bulkheads. Should there be some interior renovations at some point, things have them the colored bulkheads, which is consistent with storefront of this vintage. As far as the canopy, I think maybe the water issues might be somewhat diminished if the canopy was not real deep, and I'm not sure what the depth is of that canopy, but it doesn't extend that far into the sidewalk, probably less water to drain. So those are my comments.
Great, thank you, Ms. Anderson. Other questions and comments from the commission?
A question, as part of Coon's scope, are they going to be cleaning the brick?
Yes, they'll be cleaning, some selective tuck pointing where needed. And I think if you go back to the Coon proposal sheet, they probably give a little bit better explanation. For the cleaning, we were going to clean with a light water pressure. Mortar would be a type N bagged mixed, and samples will be done prior to start of work. The front is in pretty good shape. Just some repointing, and similar, the side is currently painted, I think, a deep red color. There would be some selective tuck pointing there, making sure the brick is sealed and watertight, and then likely repainted as well.
Okay, thank you.
I will just give my comments. I'm in support of the project as presented, except with the modifications that staff recommended with the door material and the lowered bulkhead. Echo Ms. Anderson's feeling that right now there's a banquette behind it on that area, but in the future, if you renovate it, then you're left with this higher bulkhead. So I think for the future flexibility and visibility into this, great restaurant you're creating, I align with staff's comments of lowering the bulkhead to 20 inches. And those are my comments. Other questions or comments from the commission, or would somebody like to put forward a motion? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, Madam Chair, I did raise my hand.
Thank you,
So
Mr. Strickland.
I'll make a motion to approve the project as presented with the lowering of the bulkhead in alignment with the design review committee comments, and to provide a minimum half light at the entrance door.
And then would you consider adding the condition that they must return for signage and future signage?
Right. And add the condition to return for future signage and to study the drainage and lighting consideration at that canopy.
Perfect. Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Director Wong. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Mr. Musson, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmond,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Director Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Sambry,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trasick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams, and Ms. Trot.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. Thank you. We look forward to seeing this on location in the neighborhood.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Very much appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We'll move on to our next applicant located at 2843 Franklin Boulevard, fence installation. I'd like to welcome the applicant. Please unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project. Oh, thank you.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are.
This is Brian Morach. I'm gonna let Miles Gallagher take the floor here. Miles.
Thanks. My name is Miles Gallagher. We own the building, and this is our corporate office, and we have applied for permit to put a fence down the property line. We were approved by the Ohio City Design Review. Can you go to the next slide? And the next slide. This is the current view of the building. This is the cut sheet from the fence we want to put in. Next slide, please. That's a back elevation of existing fence. Next slide. These are similar fences around our building. Those are directly across the street and next door to us. Next slide, please. That's next door. Next slide. That's across the street. Next slide, please. And that's across the street to the right. Next, please. Originally, we'd been asked by Ohio City Design Review to put a pier at the end of the fence. This is the cutout of the pier. Subsequent to that last presentation, they asked us to show what the fence would look like across the rest of the property. We've agreed to do that. And then it was recommended we don't put a pier in now because go to the next slide. You'll see this is what will be completed next year. So this is what it'll look like from the front of the property, but we're proposing to do the rest of it next year just for budgetary for reasons. The additional cost of putting in the retaining wall and leveling the fence in the front yard is about another 80,000. And we just don't have it in this year's budget. And if you look at the pillar to the right, you can see instead of the pier, it would now be a lowered pillar. So that's why they said, look, we just don't have to put the pier in this year because it would be temporary for 12 months. And I think that's it. Oh, that's our lot line. This is the top view. And right now, we're just proposing to do the lower portion of that down the lot line. And then we'll complete this as we committed to the Ohio City Design Review Committee by 12 months from now. I can just put it in next year's budget. I believe that's all.
All right, thank you for the presentation. We'll move on to Design Review Committee recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was reviewed by the Ohio City Design Review Committee on July 20th. They did approve the fence along the property line stopping short of the future retaining wall masonry required for the pier, and to return for completion of the fencing plan and retaining wall and front yard alterations in the future.
All right, thank you. Landmark staff review.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff feels that a fence that just runs along the property line and does not return across the front of the property is inappropriate for the area, as we cannot identify any other properties with this condition, either currently or historically. Furthermore, the conceptually suggested retaining wall and fence across the front are not appropriate. While there are examples of decorative aluminum or wrought iron fences in front yards in the immediate area, these all surround homes that are much closer to the sidewalk. Given the distance of this home and from the sidewalk and the changing grade between the sidewalk and the majority of the yard, a 4-foot fence on top of a 3-foot retaining wall would essentially create a 7-foot tall barrier between the sidewalk and the property. We feel that the grade change of this property acts as a natural barrier between the public and private space in this case. So staff would recommend approval of the side fence only if it extends no further forward than the front edge of the home or the building.
Okay, thank you. I will open up the floor to the commission for the questions and comments. Who would like to start us off?
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
To the staff. So it was recommended by Ohio City Design Review to have the piers. Then what you just said was that it's going to be too tall and create a barrier. So I think that I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, so this went to the local design review committee 3 or 4 times. I think they tabled it several times. You know, when they first came, it was just the fence running along the property line. So the committee asked them to add a pier to the end. So they, added a pier, and then the committee said, it still doesn't feel right. What would it look like if the fence extended across the front? So they asked them to come back showing that. So they came back again and showed what that looked like. And then, ultimately, the pier at the end of a fence that might be approved today, it sounds like from what Mr. Gallagher is saying would just be temporary because they plan on tearing it out and installing, a retaining wall and a new brick pier next year. But the retaining wall and the fence across the front right now are kind of just conceptual to show us what's planned. That's not fully fleshed out. So that's not what we're, voting on or reviewing today, other than kind of a conceptual idea of what may come. So before us today is just the fence extending along the property line, which was approved by the local committee as long as they removed the pier at the end and it did not extend any further forward than the line of the future retaining wall, which I believe is about 7 feet off the sidewalk.
Can you go to the image of the fence that they want approval for today? Sorry, just yeah, this is what's coming for us.
Any additional questions, Director Wong? Nope. Okay. Other commissions, questions or comments? I guess I'll ask mine. What is the intentions of doing this now versus waiting and doing the entire installation at one time?
So we have a liability problem because there's 70 people next door that cut across the back of our property. Frankly, we have a 4-suite apartment in the back, and we offered a gas grill for our tenants. So we have 70 people from next door coming across to use that. They're coming over to the sidewalk, which is adjacent to our actual building, and our insurance carrier is threatening to remove our insurance on the apartment building if we don't prevent people from coming over onto that sidewalk. You know, obviously they're worried, and so are we, that somebody will fall and sue us on that. That's the apartment building next door. You can see the grill in the lower left-hand corner, and they just come out. And then we have a sidewalk adjacent to our building, and it's more convenient for them to come over onto our property than walk across the gravel in the middle. So it's a liability. And so our insurance carrier, Armada, headquartered in Cleveland, suggested we fence off our property.
But primarily the issues are in the rear of the property, not the front yard of the property?
Yeah, but we were asked by Ohio City Design Review to show what it would look like if we fenced it in. So we spent $4,000 having these drawings done at their request. And we're willing to do this next year across the front. We would then fence in the rest of the front yard so that our tenants could use that and let their dogs sit in the front yard.
I guess my personal opinion is I understand and recognize the need to secure the rear, and I'm in support of a fence in the rear from the building line back, as staff had recommended. My personal opinion is that the front yard should be done at one time, because some of the fences that you showed as your precedents are lower than 4 foot high fences and really provide that barrier. And, you know, I appreciate and your direction and the amount of landscaping that you're really putting forward into the public realm with what you've shown as your proposed, but I'm not sold on the 4 foot high fence there because of, you know, what it could do to the street presence. So I would support the rear fence and, you know, bringing forward your complete proposal for the front yard so that your fencing, you know, could be coordinated with, you know, the work you do now and the work you do then. That's my personal opinion.
The front fence on top of the wall is a 3 foot fence. It'll just it'll match the 4 foot fence going north south. The east-west fence, which you see on top of the retaining wall, is 3 foot.
Right. And those are the details we'd want to see and understand and make sure that as you change from one fence height to another, it's coordinated
Sure.
and not look awkward within the public realm. So that's why I appreciate, you know, what you're showing us here. And I think with conversations and working through the details, we could work through a solution for the front yard. But at this time, I would support a fence from the building line back to secure the area of concern, and then would recommend bringing forward fencing for the front yard as a complete solution next year when, you know, you're ready to move the full design forward. That's my personal opinion. Other feedback from the commission? Ms. Anderson?
Yes, I have a question. The south side of the street has a deeper setback than the structures on the north side of the street. I'm trying to recall, are there any other buildings on that block on the south side of the street that have any fence?
The Rhodes house next door has a fence in down their lot line. If you can go into some of those photos, I think it might show it. Right there.
Oh. Okay.
That's directly next door to our property.
That's next door to, and it's to the west of their structure.
Yes.
It appears to be surrounding the parking lot as opposed to the house.
Okay.
Okay.
That's my question. I'm sort of in alignment with Ms. Pratt here. I think eliminating the issue that you're having would be the way to go, and then bring back new presentations. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Other questions and comments from the commission?
Madam Chair, I had my hand raised. Is it
Sorry.
possible? Uh,
Dan keeps on trying to type and I can't see. Go ahead, Mr. Strickland.
So with this photograph that we're looking at here, that fence is west of the Rose Building, right?
Yes.
Around the parking lot.
Yeah, and it goes
And-
down the walkway.
And that extends along Franklin as well
Yes.
on the north.
Yes,
So I'm assuming that there's no retaining wall there,
there is not.
but
The elevation
depending on
drops
where
down.
you're measuring the fence height, it's 4 feet above grade from the upper grade, but could be essentially 7 feet above grade measured from the sidewalk. Is that correct? So your proposed fence would be similar to the fence that we're looking at here, with the addition of a retaining wall as opposed to just of a fence at grade. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I understand your statement.
Or you're proposing a fence along the front on Franklin,
Right.
but measuring the height of the fence from the upper grade, you said the fence is only 3 feet high.
Correct.
It was staff's opinion that the fence would appear to be 7 feet high based from the sidewalk, but it would be very similar to the fence along Franklin right next door, is my point. I have a question. If we approve the fence from the corner of the building on each property line going south, will that solve your immediate problem with your insurer?
I believe so, yes.
So if there's a consideration to do this in phases, I personally, the way the fence is rendered and proposed as completed, I think looks very handsome myself. And I think there is precedent, given your next door neighbor's fence configuration. It might not have a retaining wall, but it has exactly the same effect when viewed from Franklin, in my opinion. So if you would agree to do this in phases, then I would support the installation of the fence to the corner of the building, and I would encourage you to complete the project when funds allow.
That's okay. That's what we've agreed to with the Ohio City Design Review.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland.
I would like to note that front yard fences, according to our zoning code, have a maximum height of 4 feet. So to the applicant, anything above 4 feet, including any retaining walls, would require variance through the Board of Zoning Appeals. I just wanted to note that.
So the extension that they currently show from the building frontage to the front property line, or extending towards the front property line, would require a variance now, because it's in their front yard,
For anything on the front property line.
or anything just on the front part.
Just the front. The sides can go up to 6 feet.
But usually isn't it the building line that delineation of front yard versus side?
Yeah, right.
So just further supports it in for speed of installation. Stopping the fencing at the building line probably would be best, because it would allow you to move forward on the fence as desired. The entire proposal length of fence currently proposed would require a variance. Because it's.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? It's my understanding that if the fence is not on the property line, but offset 6 feet in from the property line, then the fence could be 6 feet high without a variance. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is Shannon still on the line?
Shannon, are you still?
The setback is 7 feet from the sidewalk.
Yeah, I believe if there's that offset from the property line, then it could be up to 6 feet high without a variance.
So there's clarification that would needs to be happen. Ms. Leonard, are you still available on the call? Okay, it looks like we may have lost her.
It's
So-
just an FYI, it's not within our purview for today, but I just wanted to let the applicant know about the potential for that.
Excellent, thank you. Further questions or comments from the commission? I'm sorry, Mr. Brundges, yes.
Madam Chair. I just want to note that the fence that we're looking at, there was an existing fence there that was being used as a parking lot for many years when it was the county archive building. So there was the fence in the front behind landscaping. I think I need to go back and look at what we approved on that site about the return and the height, and then see what was approved and what was not approved on that site, because that might give us some more information as well.
The neighboring site.
The neighboring sites. So I don't know, because it's been quite a few years since we looked at that project. It would be a matter of building plans and see if a 6 foot, or it seems like it's a 6 foot, or I can't really tell. It looks like a 6 foot fence on the side returning. I don't know what we approved at that point, but it's gonna take some research on staff for that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brundges, for clarifying. Other questions or comments from the commission? If not, would someone like to put forward a motion? Someone like to put forward a motion? Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I propose that a motion that the project be approved for the installation of a 4-foot high fence along each east and west property line, not to extend further north than the corner of the existing structure, the existing building.
Great, we have a motion with a condition. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Carter,
All right, Ms. Anderson beat you to it, so we have a second for Ms. Anderson. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray, Director Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Sambury,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trassick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Ms. Trout.
Yes,
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
thank you. We look forward to seeing your project move forward and look
Thank
forward to
you.
seeing you return back with the front yard design.
Okay, great. Thanks for your time today. Have a wonderful weekend.
Do we need to turn back? Okay, so we are going to move back in our agenda to item number 2, case 23-070. Is anyone present for the East Preparatory Academy located at 129 Superior Avenue? Asking once again, is anyone here to represent the East Preparatory Academy located at 4129 Superior Avenue? All right, not hearing anyone speak up or seeing any hands. That concludes our certificates of appropriateness. We'll move on to our concept plan reviews. We'll begin with case 23035 located at West 45th Street and Lorraine Avenue, 45 West. Before we begin, we have a few staff comments.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to let everyone know we're seeing this project today on a conceptual basis. We saw this in concept previously in April of this year. After that point, the applicants went to the Ohio City Design Review Committee twice, being tabled once and then disapproved the second time. Since the committee's primary objections to the project were based on scales and mass of what was being proposed, the applicant elected to make some significant changes to their site plan and massings. following the recommendations that came out of not only the conceptual review that this commission undertook in April, but also the 2 conceptual review meetings and 2 final review meetings with the Ohio City Design Review Committee. The applicant's here today to gain feedback on the revised concept. After getting feedback from the commission, if the applicant elects to move forward with the current concept, it would go back to the Ohio City Design Review Committee before returning to the Landmarks Commission for final approval. So just to reiterate, today we're just providing feedback with no motions or votes being taken.
Thank you for clarifying that. And one more point of order, I do need to step out at 11:45. So Mr. Strickland, if I step out prior to the ending of the review, can you please continue the conversation?
Yes, I will.
All right, excellent. Thank you. We'd like to welcome the applicant. Please unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Good morning, commission members. I'm Chad Curtis from My Place Group. Excited to present to you all a big revision to the plans that we've got for the corner area of 45 and 44th off of Lorraine. Over the process, we've received a lot of feedback in regards to my previous layout and decided to rework the entire site to attempt to adhere to most of those comments. We can go to the next slide. Again, just to refresh your memory, this site is a unique site in its shape. It is off of Lorraine, but it interacts with 45th and 44th on 2 sides. So the next slide will show some more context, giving you a little bit. This picture in the upper right is the 44th side of it. The bottom left is the property on 45th. As you can see now, it's currently a large parking lot next to another existing commercial building to the north that is not part of our project. The bottom right picture is the land and the existing building on Lorraine. Our intent is to restore and demolish a portion of that existing building. We can go to the next slide. Overall, the project is very similar in size to what we have presented. Some major changes are, as you'll see in the plans, the building along 45th, the building along 44th has been separated. We heard, I believe, some members on this commission and the Ohio City Design Review as well spoke to us about separating the buildings so that the massing doesn't feel as large. We've reduced the heights on the buildings on 44th and 45th side. And we kind of took notes as we looked at the entire neighborhood of Ohio City. You have a mix of historic buildings next to single family houses. You've got a mixed use intertwined throughout the neighborhood. Really a lot of the buildings along the Lorraine corridor come back north or south onto the side streets and have a commercial mix pretty much up and down Lorraine from 25th all the way as far as you can go. So we can go to the next slides. This section is, if you're on Lorraine looking north, again, some of the big changes we've made here are separating the buildings into 3 independent buildings. From here, we still need to go, we would go back to PetBot to have some conversation with fire access, things like that. But what we've done, as you see on the 44th side, is lower that building to a 3-story building. The plan is to have it under 35 feet, so it'd be the same height as a single family home. Same thing on 45th. We dropped the 4th floor off of that completely. There are no dog houses or rooftop deck on that portion of the building. Again, really taking notes from that whole street, keeping it in line with the heights of homes there currently, and following some of the other cues of design and approved projects recently and historically. Where you see townhouses lining a street. The 45th portion specifically really represents that. Very similar project on 47th in Lorraine. The Knez townhouses were done a couple years ago. Some more are being wrapped up now. You see this at 48th and Bridge. There's townhouses that were approved and built a couple years ago. Again, right next to single family homes, touching them. Our property is a little different. On the 45th side to the north of it is actually another parking lot and a commercial building that's not part of our project. So that will be bound by that. On the 44th side, as we look at some of the other angles, we've implemented a access point on the north side of that building So kind of creating as much of an alley feel as possible, where you see down Fulton Court, which would be directly across the street from the 44th portion. That alley in certain situations is 10 feet wide, and you have buildings up against homes, that whole alley, all the way down as far as it goes. We can go to the next slide. This gives you a bit of an angle. So the center building coming off of Lorraine, we've played with the height a little bit here, where we raised the center building, compensating for some of the units that we lost off of those fourth floors of the other two sides. Again, stepping it back from what we, similar to the plans that we have worked out with the Ohio City Design Review off of Lorraine. Again, stepping it back on the north side of this building as well. The yellow portion on the Lorraine front shows what the existing building, we would be shrinking the footprint a little bit, something that we've discussed with Ohio City and didn't seem to have too much of an issue with that. Again, as I said, our plan is to generally maintain and restore that existing building's facade on Lorraine to what it is and was. We can go to the next slide. The portion behind the retail on Lorraine inside of the larger building would act as a parking garage. So you'd have ground floor parking underneath that. Another thing is, we were going to work with city planning on their parking vision and how much parking to unit ratios. They're currently working through some new programs. We want to offer potentially discounted bus passes. We want to have some extra parking lifts inside. So that's why we have approximately about 60 spaces now, and with the lifts we can get upwards of 76 or more. We want to offer a bike storage and a bike sharing program for the tenants. Obviously, everyone knows Lorraine has a new bike and streetscape improvement coming. We want to promote that, encourage that as much as possible. We can go to the next slide. Again, the 45th view, with being the depth of the building and the height of the building, is pretty much in line with any townhouses you see throughout the community. We can go to the next slide. Again, now this is a view looking south. What you see here on the 44th side as well is that access point. Our plan now, we've heard a lot of different feedback about where to access the property from. I think we found a decent medium, and the entrance would be off of 45th. The exit would come out one way onto 44th. So taking traffic down and immediately out. The turning lane, there's plenty of time to get in any of the turning lanes, whether you wanted to go east or west on Lorraine or south on 44th. The 45th, we would like to spearhead a traffic calming study, as well as doing some things. We've spoken about possibly putting in speed bumps. There might be some changes to a traffic light, but we're open to lead that initiative with the neighbors and the community to help alleviate an existing problem of people flying down the street, whether that's Lorraine or 45th. Under the 44th side, we've added some more parking. Again, really trying to create that separation between there's a single family house and that building. Very similar building to what we built and this commission approved on Franklin and 48th recently. It's a very, very similar size and scale. We could go to the next slide. And just another angle. Our plan would to have balconies on these buildings. So the 44th side would have porches, more like a single family type of home where it interacts nicely with the sidewalk. This is set back as well, in line with some of the other homes that are there. We can go to the next slide as well. Giving you a better idea of what's going on the site. This is our potential plan overlaid over the existing area. You can see that from the 44th side, it's similar to the homes, similar to the garages. There's some pretty large garages to the properties north of us. The gas station is obviously right there. Right now, that's what those homes are looking at, is a pretty busy gas station. On the left side, the west side of the picture, you've got a car dealership and an auto body repair shop, which is what our property would abut on that end. The north side, as I mentioned, is a commercial parking lot and a commercial operation. It's a community tool sharing program, but their plan is to continue to operate in that commercial fashion for the time being. We can go to the next slide. Again, just giving you a different view with what's on site. And our pictures are 3-dimensional. The existing ones are flat, so it's hard to totally get the scale, but the buildings should align. This is what how our plans worked in separating the existing building to the new building. This doesn't represent the current height of the building, but this would be what we would intend to do. Just another story with this. We'd have the same setbacks behind the house and on the Lorraine portion, but overall, we would look to design something towards this. The existing, I think the next slide, if you want to go to that one. Just again, our overall plan, we would have the main facade of the new building on Lorraine be brick and kind of in these depths where it then starts to transition to siding. Talking about the siding on the other 2 buildings, when you look at the streets, there really aren't a lot of brick homes on these streets at all. So queuing into those design elements, we'd have sided more looking like townhouse type of apartments that line 44th and 45th. So really blending in well. Again, I reference our Franklin West project at 4815 Franklin, sided with a little bit of brick, and it really blends almost seamlessly into that neighborhood over there, right next to, it's 24 units right next to single families and a church as well. We could go to the next slide. Some of our plans for the existing building, as you see on the left, it's pretty much what you see there. Single window above the door is one of our bigger modifications. We'd like to mirror the window on the right, giving more light inside of there. We would turn this building into our lobby, so we really want to open it up and get light into it. Right now it's pretty dark and dingy. The other thing we'd like to do is where the existing double windows are to the right of the door, we would like to lower it 1 course of block so that we can get a little bit more light again in, more of a typical storefront. And this building's facade has been changed over time. This is not the original facade. This is one that was redone to look like this in this style in the early 1920s. And so we want to open it up a little bit more, again, get more light in really is our main goal with that. Let's go to the next. Just some more details. We could go to the next. In this building is at 48th and Bridge. This is similar, I think even taller than what we would be proposing. But where you see, this is the Bridge side of the property, kind of how the 44th side would look. And then the next slide, if you go to that, shows, one back, please. Yep. And so this again shows how that building turns. And so the 45th side would have something similar to this feel. Going west away from 44th is again how that building would start to look. So you'd have some, again, townhouse feel to the property on those 2, the 44th and 45th side. But yeah, overall, really looking to get some feedback. We've kind of shown you the original version. We went through the design review with Ohio City on that and got a lot of good feedback and a lot of feedback that needed to change the overall plan. I think from a style and design, we're able to get to that point. It's really just understanding the massings and density on the site. And that's why what we've done is try to design it to look like something that blends with the rest of what's going on in the neighborhood. So appreciate any feedback you guys can give us.
All right, thank you for your presentation. I'll have a design review committee comments and recommendation.
Thank you. This was reviewed on June 15th, and it was the previous version that had been reviewed. So based upon that review, the local committee recommended disapproval, as mentioned earlier. So we're now at this particular
So Carl, the design review committee reviewed this iteration
They-
of the
They
design.
did not. This, what we are looking at today conceptually is in response to the denial recommendation from the local design review committee. So they have not seen this at all. So this is like a true conceptual review. Because city planning does a concept, schematic, final. This is more of that true massing and seeing, and they have some minor details on the design, but nothing set yet. So,
May
So in terms
I
of sequence,
may I add
go ahead.
something? So after the Ohio City Design Review meeting in June, which resulted in the disapproval, our recommendation as the department and the staff was to go to the Ohio City Design Review Committee for a charrette to talk about the massing. And I believe, Dan, you have mentioned that the invitation was sent to the Design Review Committee to, again, charrette, have a discussion, and only one person showed.
Yeah,
So,
we had a couple
Yeah.
people say they were available, but we had one committee member and then some members of OCI staff and members of Landmark staff present. So we kind of talked through what you're seeing today with Chad and his team, the idea of breaking it into 3 buildings and that sort of thing. But it was, the developer wanted to come to you guys as the ultimate decision makers to just get some guidance on which direction to head. As stated before, if he chooses to move forward after the comments he receives today, his next step would be Ohio City Design Review Committee.
for concept,
for
conceptual. Yeah.
yeah,
More schematic.
I guess
Or
more
schematic.
schematic. Yeah, we don't really have that, so I guess yes.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
it would be a little more fleshed out than what we're seeing today.
All right, understood. So in terms of sequence, we're seeing something today that Ohio City Design Review has not yet seen. So hopefully we can provide some
Correct.
comments.
Officially.
Yes, yeah, officially. Yes.
All right. And so let's move on to public comments.
Yeah,
Does-
Bob, why don't we do Councilman McCormick right now, because I know he's been waiting on the line, and then we can move on to the public comments.
Okay, very good. Councilman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, very well.
In waiting on the line, I'll tell you, every time I sit in the meeting, I learn a ton, so it is not a burden at all. But no, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I think this is an example of a project that, through community feedback as well as the expertise of local design and landmarks, has really, advanced quite a bit. So I think this is a great example of how the process can provide a better product. I want to thank the developer here too for what has appeared to be a real willingness to work with the community, the design review and landmarks to achieve the best possible products for the city. Mr. Chairman, I would note that the feedback I got from the neighborhood was that, the density on Lorraine makes sense, but bring it down on 44th and 45th. Make it, feel more like the neighborhood. We don't want a big building, apartment building next to the houses on 44 and 45. And I just really want to commend the direction that the developer is taking this, because if you'll see the most recent renderings, he's done that. Bringing the 44 and 45 down to a 35 height district, which is the lowest height district in the city's code, that really fits the texture in the context of a single family home or a townhome. And so again, really the fundamental sticking point of making sure that the project meets the neighborhood where it's at. I think the direction this where the developer is going is really achieving that. So I want to commend him for making really substantial changes based off of the feedback from the community, as well as our design committees and commissions. As I don't need to tell anyone on this call, Ohio City is a really mixed context when it comes to its urban form. We have, from the Heisey to West Virginia to Clinton we have 100-plus-year-old 4-story apartment buildings next to single-family homes. Mr. Chair, I used to live in a 100-plus-year-old townhome next to single-family homes. The point is the neighborhood, not only with new build, but historically is a mix of contexts when it comes to housing. So once again, Mr. Chair, really appreciate the direction the developer is taking this project. I think it directly responds not only to what the commissions have told him, but what neighborhood residents have told him. And that is, once again, the Lorraine treatment is different than 44 and 45, and the project needs to reflect that. So really appreciate his hard work on responding meaningfully, quite frankly, to the neighborhood and to the committees. And I'm excited to hear the additional feedback from the commission today. But again, Mr. Chair, from my perspective and from what I'm hearing from the community, it seems like this substantial change is really heading in the right direction. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Councilman. I'm sure the developer appreciates that sentiment and those comments. Mr. Lull, you have public comments based on co-urbanized comments?
Yes, good morning. My name is Nate Lull, the neighborhood planning manager at Ohio City Incorporated. I just wanted to shed some additional light on the community process that this project has been through over the last several months. So I'll keep my comments as brief as possible. So the Ohio City Incorporated Community Engagement Plan calls for developers and businesses to engage with the Ohio City neighborhood to ensure that the entire community is informed about changes taking place with as few barriers as possible. This includes a monthly community-wide meeting facilitated by us at Urban Community School. In an effort for these meetings to be as inclusive as possible, we provide food, transportation, and childcare for those who attend. These meetings are live streamed and recorded and then uploaded to OCI's website. For certain projects, OCI asks that this information be hosted on Corbinize, which is a public engagement third-party website. Corbinize allows interested residents to follow the project, learn about the timeline, get direct updates, and post their questions and feedback to the page. This feedback is then submitted to the necessary boards and commissions at the City of Cleveland. All of these projects in the neighborhood can be found by visiting ohcfeedback.com. Specifically to this development, it has gone through an extensive and transparent process, including My Place Group hosted 2 evening meetings at their offices open to the public on March 15th and April 27th. They presented at the February 21st Ohio City community-wide meeting. They posted their plans on Corbinize on February 22nd, 2023. All subsequent plans and revisions to plans have been posted to the same site, making this information publicly available before all public meetings took place. All public meetings and recordings have also been posted to Corbinize with information on the meeting and how to submit your comments to governing bodies like the Landmarks Commission. This includes 4 different meetings for Ohio City Design Review on March 16th, April 6th, May 4th, and June 15th, and 2 different meetings for Landmarks Commission on April 13th and July 26th, which is today, or 27th rather. Additionally, OCI and Councilmember McCormick hosted a meeting at the OCI office on April 6th of this year with 18 of the nearby impacted neighbors and relayed the feedback received from that meeting to the developer. That means that this project's been through a total of 10 public meetings for this specific development process. And I think it really speaks to the extensive and transparent process that this has gone through. So overall, our role has been community engagement, facilitating that engagement, making sure that the community is informed of all the changes to the project as it's gone through different iterations. We do not have a position on the matter as if it should be approved or disapproved, but feel obligated to let the commission know of the extensive public process and feedback that the developer and the community have shared. So thank you.
All right, thank you for that report, Mr. Lull. Just a point of clarification, is it accurate to say that these current plans that we're viewing today have not been uploaded to Co-Urbanize for comments? Is that correct?
To the chair, these revisions were uploaded Friday of last week to the Co-Urbanize webpage.
All right. And so are you aware of any public comment in reaction to that upload last week?
So we did not submit anything for this meeting. I believe that Mrs. Beam with the Landmarks Commission has public comment made, as we included the email for Landmarks to submit any public comment for this meeting in that update.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Then we'll move on to staff report.
Mr. Chair, before staff report, Ms. Beam does have some public comment that we received directly that she can summarize for us.
Okay, very good. Go ahead, Jessica.
We received public comment in two different phases, one for the first version of the project when it went to the Ohio City Design Review Committee. And in that grouping, we received 34 comments in opposition to the project and 9 comments in support of the project. Some people gave multiple comments, large pile of comments on the desk. The project, as Nate noted, was posted on Organized on Friday, and since then we've received 16 comments that came in. 15 were opposed, 1 was supportive. 2 comments were received after our deadline yesterday, and the majority of the comments that we've received for this most recent version, so that came in since Friday, acknowledged the alterations but expressed a significant frustration with the changes, increasing the height and the scale larger for the Lorraine building, and they had concerns with traffic and safety and the clarity of the ingress and egress options for the site. He also comments on the inappropriate scale for the residential historic district. Overall, a lot of the comments mentioned the appropriateness of thoughtful density building development on Lorraine, but did note a lot of them were just noting that the new version was out of scale and had inappropriateness.
All right, I appreciate that. So obviously there's continued extensive community interest in this project, given the volume of comments that were issued just in response to the latest upload. That's very interesting. All right, now we'll move on to Landmark staff review.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Ohio City Design Review Committee and Landmarks Commission were consistent in their feedback on the previous iterations of the project that the scale and massing were simply too much for the site. As Mr. Wall, the chair of the Ohio City Design Review Committee, said on more than one occasion, it's like trying to cram 5 pounds of flour into a 4-pound bag. After the recommendation to disapprove from the local committee in May, the developer returned to the drawing board to consider the feedback they had received during the design review process. What they are presenting today takes the advice of the committee and some commission members to break up the site into 3 buildings. Staff feels that this is moving in the right direction. We still have some concerns about the overall scale of the development. On the West 44th Street frontage, we note that historically there was a building right on the lot line. 3 stories could be appropriate for this portion of the project. The scale of the West 45th facing building is improved and much more appropriate to the street. But as a commission, we not only have to look at the appropriateness of the design, but also the appropriateness of density. So as we move to the center building, 5 stories in the residential district portion of the site still feels a little too high. So we feel that potentially stepping the building down as it moves north might be appropriate. There also appears to be no room for green space in this concept, which would be nice to see. Well, the one-way entrance from the West 45th Street and an exit on West 44th seems like an improvement from our perspective. There are still likely some issues regarding fire access, as Chad mentioned. Those will hopefully be resolved by returning to PetBot to work on that type of issue. Staff certainly supports the development of the site, as do many residents, but we feel that it needs to be appropriate and fit the overall context it's addressing. So we feel that it's heading in the right direction, but the rear of the Lorraine facing middle building may need to scale down a bit once it enters the residentially zoned area. Finally, we do have some concerns about the treatment of the historic funeral home and feel that the original fenestration should be retained. So basically, staff feels that this new concept is moving in the right direction. But when dealing with this type of scale, the execution will be critical to make it feel less massive.
All right. Thank you very much, Dan. Now we'll move on and open the floor to commission comments.
I can jump in, Mr. Chair, because I do have to leave in a few minutes. This is Director Huang. From a planning standpoint, we support the development of residential along this corridor. It fits with our transit-oriented development work that is happening. And, you know, this corridor, Lorraine Avenue, is a higher frequency transit corridor. The 22 and other buses run along this. And ultimately, in order to support our transportation corridors, we need to start with residential. And there is not as much residential on Lorraine currently. So overall, support residential development. In addition, a lot of these lots are parking lots. And so activating them, bringing more value is something that we care about. About the site, I think it's worth noting, and we had this discussion, that it is a really challenged site, but we also recognize that, you know, those property owners, the gas station and the other one on the corner likely aren't selling. So this is the land we're working with. And I think that I think this is an improvement because of how the scale and the massing along 44th and 45th really are in line with those homes and those structures. I'm okay with the 5-story building in the middle because I think that it is, you know, it's like sort of right down the middle and it's shielded by the stepped nature of the buildings on 44th and 45th. So overall, I'm in support of the direction. I think it was actually, maybe it was Councilman or someone from Ohio City Inc. who shared that, you know, the alternative to this site is a commercial use, which is going to actually be much more intense with regard to traffic and people coming and going. And residential is actually quite it's more predictable because you know who's living there, you know who's likely going to be driving up and through it. And of course support commercial as well, but just to the point of traffic here, you're going to have a more predictable pattern versus something that has a more intense use from the commercial side. So I'm okay with it. I think it's headed in the right direction. So.
All right, thank you, Director, for those comments. Do we have any other commission member comments?
Ms. Anderson has her hand raised.
All right,
Thank you.
go ahead, Ms. Shen. May I say this one?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As far as the number of units, the number of parking spaces, what is the difference now between the number that were there before the earlier iteration?
Chad, did you hear that question? Oh, you're muted, Chad.
You're muted.
I believe she was asking what the difference of parking and apartments to the plan before is to now. So parking, we've actually increased. Our parking count before was approximately 60. Something to note too, we do have around 40 plus bike spaces in the prior plan as well as this plan. The unit count, I'm trying to pull up the exact number. The unit count has changed slightly. One of the reasons too for that is we've got a lot of smaller 1-bedrooms to help with make the building more affordable. You know, that's something that also the smaller buildings, smaller units we have in our existing portfolio of properties up and down Lorraine throughout Ohio City. Those are the ones where you really see people without cars. Those are the people who could work in one of these restaurants right up and down the street or one of the other businesses and live and work on the same block potentially. So that's The unit count is up slightly, I think, with less than 10, but our parking has increased, like I said, with the lifts over 16 spaces. And with working with the planning department's direction and just what we want to do to help support transit-oriented developments like this that really push people to the bus is offer some subsidized bus passes and other sorts to help reduce that parking demand.
And the number of units?
And
The total here.
this plan has 108 right now, and we were right around I believe 100 or so before.
And you mentioned affordable one bedrooms. What would a rent on an affordable one bedroom be?
What would a rent be? We haven't set rental prices, but I can say that I'm proud to say that we have the lowest cost new construction apartments anywhere in Ohio City. So we have studios that have started in the $800 range, and we have one bedrooms that started in the $1,000, low $1,000 range. So it just depends on final costs. Obviously, the economy, interest rates, construction costs can fluctuate, so it's hard to say exactly.
I would imagine you'd have some sort of projection in order to, go to your funders and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and our intent is to stay within those rates. If I can keep studios towards $800, $900, brand new building, that'd be our goal. If I can keep rental rates on the one bedrooms towards the $1,000, $1,200 range, then I would. Also to note, we did apply for I think they call it the ARPA money that the city had for affordable housing. We did not get that program, but if we have another source of support from the city, we would love to build and help create more affordable units. But just being that we don't have any of those grants or subsidies in place, we can't lose money to build the building, I guess. So we make it as affordable as possible, but still have to be profitable.
I read over the letters. There were dozens of letters. There were several in support, but the most were in opposition. And the opposition basically boiled down to scale, inadequate parking, and ingress and egress, especially at the 44. How are you addressing the concerns of the neighbors?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess to clarify something, the letters that you've received, looking at the names, they're very similar to the first group of letters and the second group. We also supplied equal letters of support, but I guess the way we've shared them aren't the typical format. People emailed us directly, and then we shared it to you guys. But we have over 20 plus letters that, in addition to the ones that you have, of support for the project from business owners, residents. So it's a mixed bag of opinions. We didn't seek additional letters of support right now since we're just at a conceptual. We will certainly have those letters submitted formally or through the right process of support so you guys can see those. But in response to listening to the neighbors, we've made a lot of changes. We've made tons of changes from siding materials. Some of the immediate neighbors' comments was too many different materials, so simplifying it. That's why I said making the 44th and 45th buildings look sided, more blending in with the immediate homes surrounding those. Reducing the height from 4 stories on 45th and 44th down to 3 stories. I mean, that's like, I think we mentioned it's in the lowest height district. We wouldn't even need a height variance on those buildings. Reducing the scale and pushing it towards where immediate neighbors have said, build big on Lorraine. Someone even said build a skyscraper off of Lorraine. Now, I don't think a skyscraper is the appropriate building on Lorraine at this point of Lorraine, but what we've built is historical to the size and use of the buildings on Lorraine. When you, like I mentioned in the beginning, when you look at up and down Lorraine, there's been historically 4-story buildings next to 2-story or two-story single families, 2-story buildings. So we've made a lot of changes all over. The scale is, density is a thing. Some people look at unit count The city, I believe, looks at it as square footage. So when you look at the density of the 45th side, for example, that is equal and even not less than the Kenez townhomes just one block to the west on 47th, for example. When you look throughout Ohio City and you look at whether it's an apartment building or it's a townhouse, the 45th and 44th sides of the building are what you see in that three-story structure. The density-wise is basically what we're looking at here. And I bring up our our Franklin West, which was a two-family lots, went through this landmarks process, the zoning process, and that's 24 units now, right next to single-family homes. When you look at our 41 West down the street, which ironically, one of the people who have been vocal against this building, we had the block club approval, which voted in support of it in her kitchen. It's right next to single family homes within a few feet. We've now separated it by a width equal to what is on Fulton Court, separating single family homes from buildings. So it really massaged the site quite a bit. And even to this concept, lots of feedback from the different board members, neighbors, and really tried to adapt as much as possible to accommodate them.
All right, thank you. On the participant panel, for those joining virtually, I don't see any other hands raised. Are there any other commission comments?
Comments on the design.
I didn't catch that. Are there additional
Comments on the design?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, now I have a microphone.
Yeah, that's much better.
I have some comments on the design.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay. The existing building, I agree with the commission, with landmarks that I think the fenestration should pretty much be maintained. It's a unique, charming building with kind of a French influence. It's really unlike any other building around. And I think part of the thing about that building that makes it so inviting to look at is that side yard with the wrought iron gate. And, I realize that this would impact programming, but there's no green space whatsoever in this design. And, I think retaining some of that space, would really enhance the overall look. I think the massing is excessive. I think especially it being kind of squeezed in the middle of the block. It just 5 pounds of flour in a 4-pound bag seems like a good analogy. And I don't feel at all confident that the neighbors' concerns are really being addressed. I think the city would like to see development. I can understand that. I can understand that the city wants, taxpayers. But, I had a real concern about something I saw in one of the letters where he said, a city planning employee told residents that if they did not like something about this proposal or any aspect of the neighborhood, they can just move. I hope that really didn't happen. I hope it didn't happen, but, sometimes I even, sitting in this room, I feel like, are we about development or are we about the community? What's the priority? So it's just difficult to listen to the impassioned pleas of the neighbors and then, justify moving forward with things that, might really impact people. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Anderson. Any other comments in the room?
I do have some comments. This is Mike Sambury. Having sat on the Ohio City Design Review Board previously to this, I was part of a lot of the conversations on that level. And I do like the direction this has gone. I really appreciate that it's been broken up from one solid, really large mass to much more palatable sized buildings. And I think it would be interesting if in another world, each one of these three massings was presented on its own, what the community would feel about each one of them. I think it would be, I believe it would be much more appropriate and much more welcomed if each was presented on its own. I think because such a big building was presented as the first pass, that's the first impression everybody has. I do appreciate all the direction that it's gone. I think it's in a much better direction now. And I like that your inspiration for the West 45th Street, at least the inspiration you've shown so far is broken up and feels like individual houses instead of one mass that's like 5 houses long. So I do appreciate that, and I hope that follows through in the next design iteration. So I commend you for the direction we've gone, and I like this direction. I think it's really successful.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I would like to ask the applicant, there's been comments about the existing funeral home structure and modifications to that south facade facing Lorraine. Would you like to make any comment in response to those comments that you've heard?
Yeah, actually, I'd love, just so I'm clear, I mean, when you say or when the comments about the different fenestrations, what specifically are we referring to? Because our main change is the window above the door, the detail of the entrance, the dental molding along the gutter line. We want to keep all that. It's lowering, not even so much as widening at all the windows on the ground floor. What would be the preference to keep? Don't change the window, or well, restore the windows, but keep the sizes, and that's satisfactory on that building.
You know, it's hard to see here in these photos, but the window on the left, on the second floor, I thought there was some decorative elements there. Do I recall correctly?
There's some wrought iron grating over it.
Yeah,
it's certainly old. I don't know if it's original to the building, but it's been there for.
Yeah, I don't think it's original to the building. I think that it was modified, but maybe in the 20s. But it's a unique building. I think some of those aspects need to be maintained.
Yeah.
And if not maintained, even accentuated, you know.
When we did a site visit, actually with Landmarks and some of the Ohio City Design members, the shutters, if I guess the best way to call them, on the sides of the windows, they don't. We don't. From the looks of them, they don't look like they're 20s material. It looks like something that was put on later. I'd be fine modernizing them or updating them. Like if the one, for example, on the first floor, to make it look normal, we needed to drop it and extend it somehow. I'd be more than happy to try to find a fabricator that could do that or create that. The window, I'm not positive, honestly, and I can't see in this picture what's over the small window above the door. But I agree with you. I think the building is charming. It's got a lot of very unique details, and our goal is to achieve some more physical sunlight coming inside of it, so it's a more open, welcoming space from the interior and usefulness of it, but also keeping those unique details of the building. And I think when it's restored, it can really offer a cool element to the street and to the property. So that's our goal, is to make it look and pop the same as it does now, and if not better, when we're done with it.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I don't necessarily think that the shutters are essential. Again, I don't have enough information from the size of this photo, but there are some really nice details, which I think if you had the two windows that were identical, you would lose that.
Yeah, I agree. I was on the site visit. I don't think those shutters add anything in terms of historical significance or add to the fabric of the building. And do you have any additional information with regard to, you said you thought that facade was modified, possibly as far back as the 20s, but not original. Do you have any physical indication on the interior, exterior as to what would have been there originally?
Not positive. There might be some pictures out there. I got to dig them up, honestly. I know that this French inspiration was created in the 20s for the building. It wasn't originally built to look this way. It was a big modernization at that time for it, or conversion into this French type of look. I think it was more of a traditional building to the neighborhood before that.
So your rendering to the right that we're looking at obviously is a significant modification to how the building appears currently. And you've heard comments from commission staff and commission members pushing back against that level of modification to that facade. So just, yeah, I would say take those comments under advisement.
Absolutely.
All right. So are there any additional comments? Again, I don't see any hands raised, any comments from the room. If not, does the applicant feel like you received sufficient direction to move forward with your design?
Yes, I mean, I've heard two positions, which kind of leaves me in the middle of one likes, one doesn't like it. Just if there's any other feedback on progressing these drawings to more design drawings, I would love to hear if the massing, if the heights feel good, if it seems to be a good response to the comments that we've heard from the different boards.
Yeah, as is typical, obviously you've heard a wide array of comments, some positive, some negative, which should be expected at this level of design. But do you have any specific questions that you think would benefit you in moving forward with regard to comments that you've received?
Yeah, I guess, does the Landmarks Commission feel the scale and the blocks as proposed are appropriate and that we should continue to move forward towards designing this as the site plan calls out now?
All right, so I'll add my comment. I think that the direction is certainly positive in splitting this up into three specific structures. And I think lowering the height on 45th and 44th is certainly a move in the right direction. The renderings that we saw in Lorraine, I believe, still represented a 4-story structure. And you're intending to add another floor to that structure. So it may benefit the project to consider stepping back that 5th floor even further, so that the massing is reduced somewhat, viewing from Lorraine. But you'll have to develop those. It might be fine with the 5th floor, just in addition of the same footprint as currently proposed, but it may have to be stepped back to ease that massing somewhat, but we'll have to see that to review it.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Hearing no other comments, I think we're done, and appreciate your presentation. Look forward to seeing additional refinements to your project.
Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll move on. That closes our review of concept plans. We'll move on to review of meeting minutes. Dan, you want to tell us what we're reviewing?
Yes, last week I sent out draft meeting minutes from June 11th, 2020, April 14th, 2022, June 8th, 2023, and June 22nd, 2023. So I guess I did not receive any edits.
Any comments with regard to review of those minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion. to approve?
There's not much of us here, so.
Yeah, it's up to you, Michelle.
I move that we approve the minutes from June 11th, 2020, April 14th, 2022, June 8th, 2023, and June 22nd, 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Do I have a second to that motion?
Leave me to second. I'll second.
All right. Thank you very much. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Sandberg,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland.
Yeah.
All that's, so motion passes unanimously.
Very good. All right. And Dan, do you have any administrative reports for us?
Just a quick, we had a site visit last week for proposed demolition, new construction, Little Italy, that'll be coming before the commission in the next month or so for concept. It's good to see a lot of the design review committee members out there, and a couple of landmarks commission members were present as well. Of note this week, Mr. Robert P. Madison, a very prominent Cleveland architect and friend of the commission, turns 100 tomorrow. So very happy birthday to Mr. Madison. And as earlier noted, the Acela permit system the city uses is down for upgrades for the remainder of the week, but it should be back up by Sunday morning.
Okay, very good. And there's no chair's report for this meeting. Seeing no other business on the agenda, I will adjourn the July 27th Landmarks Commission meeting. Everybody have a great weekend.
Thank you, you too.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.